The story begins in a fortress where a person sits alone in his room, deeply disappointed by something. He thinks that the people of their territory are going to starve again, but the Duke is not bothering to take any measures to prevent it. Suddenly, he looks out of the window, finding a massive ball of fire approaching the fortress, which leaves him shocked. As he gazes at the widespread destruction in the city, with countless soldiers killing civilians after the attack, he realizes they are under attack by the Imperial Army. Remembering that this army is commanded by the Emperor Zerone, the person feels enraged at him. While more and more balls of fire start to fall upon the fortress, he notices a warrior standing above the roof of the castle and recognizes him as their duke. Shocked, he calls out to the duke, urging him to get away from there. A massive ball of fire strikes the roof, causing everything to be destroyed. Moments later, another fireball smashes through the person's window, burning him to death and marking the fall of the worthless territory of the empire. Right after his death, the person wakes up as a young man, finding himself in a room. He looks at his reflection in the mirror, becoming shocked, considering that he was supposed to die. He remembers this face belonging to the Duke when he was young, about 20 years ago. The person becomes surprised, realizing that he has regressed as Duke Aaron as a result of something completely unexpected happening to him. Aaron becomes shocked, locks himself up in a room, and stops eating and drinking while continuously cursing the Emperor for killing him. He keeps thinking about taking his revenge. After spending 3 days in a similar way, venting his frustration at those who led to his death, he finally makes the decision to use the second chance to the fullest. Shutting himself in a room again, he starts to investigate everything about the Duke to live like him and prevent the coming fall. Shortly thereafter, a sudden famine strikes the territory, and Aaron, despite having all the luxuries, refuses to eat. Crushing the bread with his hands, he considers that his people are unable to even have a piece of bread. Aaron becomes frustrated, remembering that the real Aaron never paid attention to his people, who were dying of hunger. Watching him crush the bread like that, Cheryl, his sister, becomes angry and stops him from doing that, remarking that it is very precious, and she got it after a lot of effort. Seeing her, Aaron quickly puts the bread back, stating that he was doing it because he can digest it better in crushed form. Asking if she has time, Aaron suggests going somewhere, making her confused. After some time, both of them go to visit the Knight Captain Rommel, who states that Aaron already ordered him to manage the food supply and asks why he called him with his armor on. In response, Aaron reveals that Emperor Zerone is going to kill them all, making both Rommel and Cheryl shocked and unable to believe it. Cheryl asks why he would do such a thing despite being their uncle and considering the promise he made with their late father. In response, Aaron states that it is not strange for the promise to be broken until they have the right to the throne and reveals that Zerone is taking part in underground work to break the promise. Mentioning the dragon's blessing, Aaron states that it is time to use it, causing Cheryl to ask if they were not supposed to hide it till the end. In response, Aaron states that dying at the hands of the Emperor is not included in the end he talked about and suggests that they should begin. Cheryl starts thinking that her brother's words must have a reason behind them, and she activates a magic spell, causing a portal to appear in front of them. As she walks towards the portal, Rommel calls out to her, expressing his surprise at her ability to use magic. Turning around, she smiles, remarking that she might not have told him about her ability. Crossing through the portal, all three of them enter a frozen land and reach the end of a cliff. Cheryl states that it might not work since she has not tried it for a long time. She begins casting, and a huge ball of fire forms above them. Casting similar spells simultaneously, she causes a huge wheel of inferno to form, leaving Rommel shocked. Using that spell, she strikes a mountain far away from them, causing its tip to get separated, which intensifies Rommel's astonishment. Cheryl, who seems unmoved by her spell, remarks that it was barely over the 7th circle, causing Rommel to express his astonishment at her high-tier magician abilities. Acknowledging that Cheryl is indeed a high-ranking magician, she states that it's still not enough to face the entire Imperial army. Eren agrees, noting that she needs to become more powerful while feeling astonished since, according to the Duke's diary, she was only a 5th circle mid-ranked magician, not an archmage. Meanwhile, Cheryl mentions that her skills are nothing compared to her brother's, prompting Rommel to turn to Eren and ask if that's true. In response, Eren suggests that he should give it a try and draws his sword. Feeling a little nervous, he remembers that the previous day he was reading the diary of the Duke and came to know that he is a Grandmaster-ranked swordsman. Wondering if he really had such great power, Eren got up from the chair and walked towards the book rack. Considering that no one was powerful from the start, he took out a book on basic Imperial swordsmanship and started to learn the technique from it. Remembering that, Eren raises his sword in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy, and uses the technique of piercing wind, launching a powerful slash. As a result of such a powerful move, the mountain gets divided into two, followed by its complete destruction. Considering that, despite not going directly for that mountain, his attempt was successful, Eren stands confidently while Rommel is taken aback by his power. The next day, a dragon flies above the territory and suddenly senses the blessing it granted a human several millennia ago. Taking a flip in the air, the dragon rushes toward the territory, transforming into a bird, and then lands on the ground, assuming a human form. Looking at the capital in front of him, the dragon wonders if he should go and see the humans who received his blessing. A few days ago, when Eren regressed as the Duke, he read the diary of the Duke and learned that Uncle Zerone, with the help of the feudal lord, pressurized his father and usurped the throne. Soon after their father died, he and Cheryl had to leave the kingdom because they were chased away. The reason they were able to survive was because of the condition and oath that Uncle Zerone took with his father to protect them. In order to prevent them from coveting the throne for the rest of their lives, Zerone made Eren live as the Duke of the Brahn territory on the outskirts of the continent. This place was a small fortress built on barren land where even the crops could not grow, and was under continuous attack by monsters. With the blessing of the dragon that both he and his sister had at the time of their birth, both of them had Grandmaster-level abilities. Despite having the powers to resolve all the problems in the territory, Eren decided to keep a low profile and hide his powers in order to keep the oath that his father had made. Reading all that, Eren closed the diary, wondering if a promise to the dead was more important than the lives of the living. Meanwhile, in the territory plaza, a child who was badly hurt while playing a game receives treatment from a saintess, causing his hand to become completely fine without even hurting. She states that his parents must be worried. Cecilia, the saintess, tells him that he should not play dangerous games, and the child complies, causing her to compliment him for being a good child. Just then, she hears an announcement revealing the order of the Duke for everyone to gather at the plaza. A little later, as they gather, they become confused looking at Eren, who is standing on a stone. People become confused, wondering why he intends to make a speech, while feeling frustrated considering that he never says anything useful. Meanwhile, one of them states that their Duke has gotten very strange these days and has hired all the knights who were jobless and is training them. Hearing their remarks, Eren thinks that it is natural for them to make such comments, considering the personality of the original Duke and his negligence toward his duty. A few moments later, he starts speaking, revealing that orcs have increased in number and are targeting their territory, which has made it difficult for them to get food. But they cannot just leave it be. Hearing that, the people do not seem to be shocked, remarking that the orcs have been doing these things for a long time. Observing their indifference, Eren asks if they are ready to sit still and become a target for those creatures, or if they want to follow him to fight for survival. Hearing that, all of the people become shocked, considering it very strange for their Duke to show concern for them. Meanwhile, Eren goes on to declare that their territory is no longer protected and, from then on, they are going to be the invaders. While the people become perplexed, Eren explains that the orcs, who pile up all the grain in their warehouses, are even wealthier than humans, causing them to become shocked. Looking at their reaction, Eren realizes that they have finally taken the bait and smiles, encouraging them to plunder those monsters and become rich. In response, all of them get determined to defeat the orcs and become rich, supporting Eren in his decision. Standing among them, the dragon, disguised as a human, looks at Eren with surprise, wondering if he is the one who got the blessing, remarking that he is an individual with a lot of potential. The dragon summons a piece of paper in his hand. Sometime later, Eren is busy arguing with his treasurer in the castle. As the argument grows more heated, someone knocks at the door of the room, causing them to turn around in frustration. Entering the room, Rommel states that a person with a letter of recommendation from Duke Rainan has arrived, making both of them surprised. Entering the room, the person, who turns out to be the dragon disguised in human form, introduces himself as Canis, stating that he has come there at the recommendation of Duke Rainan. Taking the letter from his hand, Eren remembers that Canis was the same person who stated he was a strategist but left 1 year later in his last life. Opening the letter, he begins to read, stating that it has been 3 years since he left for the Brand territory. Considering the situation and his territory, the letter states that a competent strategist has been sent to him along with some funding, with the hope that he will make good use of it. Reading the letter, Eren recalls that Duke Rainan was a very loyal servant of his father, but then becomes surprised upon reading about the funding sent to him. Hearing about the funding, the treasurer also becomes surprised, while Canis reveals it to be 50,000 gold. Considering it to be a very small amount, the treasurer becomes disappointed, stating that the Duke has become less generous after losing his power. However, Eren, who seems satisfied even with the little amount, states that this will help him with more armor and keeping the territory clean. Hearing that, the treasurer becomes confused. Eren explains that it is better to invest the leftover money, and if they maintain cleanliness, people will not fall sick, which will indirectly contribute to the stability of their territory. Considering it to be a little unrealistic yet good logic, Canis becomes astonished, realizing that Eren cares a lot about his people along with hygiene. However, the treasurer becomes frustrated with his plans and walks out of the room, stating that he's not going to play any part in it. After he leaves, Eren turns to Canis, considering his arrival to be perfect timing. However, he remarks that despite being sent by Duke Rainan, he cannot put him in a position of great importance right away, and Canis agrees. Eren states that he would like to see his capability as a strategist in the Orc campaign, asking if he can do that. Despite feeling frustrated at a human testing his capability, Canis states that strategy is his specialty, telling him to leave it to him. While Eren shares his wish to get along well, Eren then thinks to himself about taking a lot of benefit from Canis in the next 3 years. On the other hand, Canis also finds him to be a very interesting individual. While he is thinking, Eren shares his intention of making dungeons after the war is over, asking what Canis thinks about it. This turns out to be something very strange, which makes Canis shocked. 1 week later, Eren stands on a rock in front of numerous knights and states that they are already aware of the strategy, asking if anyone needs more explanation. In response, everyone stands silent. Observing this, Eren takes it as a sign that they have understood everything and orders them to depart right away. He declares that this day is going to be the day when they will destroy the orcs. In response, the entire army raises their weapons in determination, and the palace gates are opened with Eren leading the army as they depart for the mission. Standing in front of the Black Forest within his territory, Eren remembers an event that took away his castle and made it the hiding place for creatures. He recalls how those creatures cut off all their food supply lines, leading to starvation in their territory after a few years. Clenching his fist, he vows to get rid of the root of all these problems beforehand. While he's thinking, Rommel approaches him and states that they have found a group of kobold skirmishers, causing Eren to ask how many there were. In response, Rommel reveals that there were 5 groups, each comprising 6 members. Hearing that, Eren calls out to Cheryl, who looks out of the camp and sees Eren giving her a signal, which she understands. She states that she will be coming out. Taking her magic staff, she exits the camp and summons a fireball, launching it towards the forest. In the forest, the groups of kobold skirmishers, who are getting instructions from their group leader, are struck by these explosions and die. Realizing that the explosions were much greater than anticipated, Eren becomes anxious and turns to Cheryl, forbidding her from using such powerful attacks that would gather the attention of the Emperor. However, in response, she starts to tease him, causing him to think that he should not have brought her with him if he had known her intentions. Seeing his expression, Canis remarks that the truth has to come out sooner or later, and he cannot tell his troops to keep quiet just for fear of getting noticed. Understanding this, Eren turns to Canis and asks if he found the location. Canis agrees. One day before their dispatch, Canis had explained to him the strategy of bringing out all the monsters to a favorable location and then fighting them there. Hearing this, Eren became a little confused, but Canis explained that it would decrease the number of casualties for them. Canis revealed that the Orc tribe had 2,000 members while they only had 500, which would still lead to a great number of casualties no matter what. While everyone sat quietly, Canis went on to state that since they were going to be on the offensive, they needed to be more careful regarding the area they would be fighting. Canis explained that they would need 100 cavalrymen to lure the orcs, which surprised Eren. He asked if they would be using the cavalrymen as bait, but Canis explained that their soldiers would be mobile, making it difficult for the monsters to catch them. On their way, the monsters would also be targeted by the other soldiers. He further stated that they would lure the rest of them to the bottom of the hill and surround them with shieldmen, forcing them to surrender. After hearing the entire plan quietly, Eren decided to go with it, finding it to be an impressive one. As a result of the massive explosion in the forest, the orcs come out of their tribe, finding the countless dead bodies of kobold skirmishers. Picking those dead bodies up, they begin to walk back inside. Realizing that the monsters are on the move, Canis states that these are not normal orcs and are likely preparing for battle as soon as they realize something is wrong. In that case, he suggests Eren capture them and use them as slaves. Hearing that, Eren turns on in surprise, while Canis explains that it is going to be beneficial for the dungeon development, which Eren had mentioned earlier. Hearing this, Eren remarks that it is a good idea but wonders if the orcs are going to follow the orders of a human like him, considering that such creatures only follow the orders of dragons. In response, Canis states that orcs are the type of creatures that follow the orders of anyone with overwhelming power, and he does not need to be a dragon for that. Stating that he will think about it later, Eren remarks that he does not want extra casualties to occur just because of his greed. To begin their plan, Eren calls out to Cheryl, instructing her to move to the woods with her troops, while Rommel is tasked with creating a formation with the shieldmen behind the hill. He then turns to Canis, telling him to stay at the top of the hill and wait, to which Canis complies. Eren, pulling out his sword, then commands the remaining troops and proceeds forward with them. Meanwhile, the leader of the orcs, Kuruk, sits on a chair, feasting on meat, when another orc approaches him, informing him of the arrival of humans. Hearing this, Kuruk, the orc chief, becomes frustrated and asks where they are. His subordinate reveals that they are in the Black Forest. Chief Kuruk, remarking that the cowardly people hiding behind the castle walls have finally come out, declares that it will be the death of all of them. Going to the top of his castle, he tells the orcs about the arrival of humans, commanding them to kill them all and raid the castle. He orders them to release the Minotaur, and they open the doors of the prison house, leading a gigantic Minotaur to emerge. Letting out a loud roar, the monster joins the army of orcs, while Kuruk encourages them to kill the humans and commands them to leave the castle with his army. Flying above the hill, Canis, having transformed into a small bird again, suddenly hears a voice and finds the entire orc army proceeding forward at great speed. Watching this, he captures the image in his magic ball, anticipating the power of humans during this war. Meanwhile, Eren also proceeds forward with his army and finds the orcs coming toward him, prompting him to command his army to get into a charge formation. Raising his sword in the air, he commands his knights to charge, pressing forward at great speed. Both armies soon come face to face, leading to a dangerous clash between 100 soldiers and 2,000 orcs. Using his excellent swordsmanship, Eren leads his army and continues to kill the orcs, making a path for them to proceed forward. Realizing that there are still a large number of monsters surrounding them, Eren thinks they need to push a little more. Just then, a gigantic axe suddenly comes in his direction, causing him to lean backward and dodge it. Surprised, he looks at the massive Minotaur standing in front of him, roaring loudly, which forces him and all his soldiers to cover their ears, unable to bear the loud noise. However, considering that they cannot give up so easily, he turns back to his army, telling them not to stop and to keep moving forward, which confuses them. Leaving them, he starts to charge forward, raising his sword to kill the orcs coming toward him. However, he remembers Canis's suggestion to use these creatures to fulfill his dungeon development motive. Considering this, he avoids killing the creatures and simply hits the orcs with his sword, knocking them down. Seeing the orcs continuously coming at him, Eren realizes that his army has angered them enough. Having fulfilled his motive, he turns back to his army, stating that the monsters are too many and instructs them to retreat. They start running away, which confuses the orcs. Realizing that the humans are fleeing after initiating the battle, the orcs start shouting, determined to catch them. Making its way through the orcs, the Minotaur comes forward and starts to follow them at great speed. Seeing the monster closing in, the knights become anxious and call out to Eren, stating that it is about to catch up to them. In response, Eren declares that he will deal with the monster himself, telling all of them to hurry up and run to the hill. With that, he turns again and moves toward the monster while all of his soldiers keep running towards the hill. As the Minotaur is about to launch an attack on him, Eren keeps proceeding forward, vowing not to lose a single one of his comrades. Charging forward at great speed, he launches a powerful attack on the Minotaur, causing it to crash to the ground, defeated in an instant. Afterward, he turns around to find all his soldiers looking at him in astonishment instead of following his command and running toward the hill. Relieved that he won't have to carry the monster on his own, he calls out to one of the knights, instructing him to tie up the Minotaur and hide it in the forest. Confused by this order, the knight asks if he's not going to kill it, to which Eren agrees, stating that it might be useful to them later. The knight complies. While they are tying up the Minotaur, one of them points in a certain direction, revealing that the orcs are coming after them again. Standing at a distance, Kuruk, who is leading the orcs, vows to defeat the humans instead of allowing them to escape the forest. Just then, the sky suddenly lightens up, causing them to look up and find countless balls of fire above their heads. These balls of fire lead to a massive explosion, killing many of the orcs. Realizing that Cheryl is shooting them recklessly instead of leaving some of them for his dungeon project, Eren has no choice but to retreat and go away. Watching him, Kuruk becomes enraged and commands the remaining monsters to catch him, vowing to avenge his fallen brother at the hands of those humans. Following the soldiers, Kuruk reaches the bottom of the hill, determined to catch them, when he suddenly collides with something and falls back. Confused, he looks up to find countless strong shields held by the knights, blocking their path, which shocks him. Appearing from behind the shields, Eren states that all the orcs have been surrounded. He presents them with a way to get out alive through a duel between two leaders, with the losing one becoming the slave of the other. In response, Kuruk states that he cannot trust humans, while feeling a little frightened at the thought of losing to them. Meanwhile, Eren declares that he will swear on his pride as a knight, telling Kuruk to do the same on his pride as an orc. However, Kuruk replies that humans do not have any pride in the first place, which enrages Eren. This causes him to forget the negotiation and call out to the soldiers holding shields. However, as the soldiers are about to crush all the orcs, Kuruk reluctantly accepts the challenge, telling Eren to remember his promise after the battle. In response, Eren walks inside the circle of shields as Kuruk suddenly rushes forward, launching an attack. However, Eren remains still, a smile on his face. As Kuruk's powerful strike lands, a cloud of dust spreads everywhere. But as the dust settles, Kuruk finds Eren standing beside him, unscathed, and becomes confused. He realizes that Eren successfully dodged the attack. Eren continues to dodge Kuruk's charging blows, realizing that the blessing of the dragon is helping him. His body moves instinctively before his brain can react. Frustrated by Eren's evasiveness, Kuruk begins cursing him, which only enrages Eren. Piercing his sword into the ground, Eren declares it's time to teach Kuruk a lesson, intending to fight bare-handed. Seeing this, Rommel is shocked, remarking that it's not wise for a swordsman to throw away his sword during a fight. But Eren reassures him, stating that he's just trying to teach the creature a lesson. Seeing Eren throw away his weapon, Kuruk does the same, deciding to confront him bare-handed. As they stand face to face, Rommel worries that Eren is at a great disadvantage without his sword. He knows that orcs are built several times stronger than a normal adult and that their nails are as tough as steel, against which Eren should be no match. As Kuruk comes towards him, Eren notices how slow his movements are. Wondering if they are really that slow, Eren effortlessly evades Kuruk's attack. When Kuruk tries to punch him, Eren wonders if he can take the hit, but easily dodges it, getting only slightly hurt. Smiling, Eren realizes that the punch didn't hurt much after all. Exhausted by his failed attempts, Kuruk stands at a distance, while Eren, astonished at how little damage he's taken, watches. The knights, seeing their lord seemingly overpowered in the battle, begin to worry about their fate if they become slaves. However, Kuruk, determined to win, declares that he will make all the humans his slaves. Suddenly, Eren disappears from Kuruk's sight, confusing him. Eren reappears right above Kuruk and slaps him hard across the face. The powerful hit sends Kuruk crashing to the ground at a distance. As Kuruk gets up, he realizes Eren is using stealth magic and angrily accuses him of cowardice. Just then, Eren appears right in front of him again, delivering another powerful slap that sends Kuruk flying backward. Seeing Kuruk about to fall on them, the knights quickly form a shield wall, causing Kuruk to strike the shields and go flying back once more. Eren catches up to him, seizes him by the head, and swings him around, draining him of all his strength before slamming him to the ground. Kuruk, now powerless, pleads for mercy. In the next moment, Eren raises both his hands and strikes Kuruk with such force that he knocks him out, successfully concluding their orc subjugation mission. Some time later, Kuruk regains consciousness, finding himself tied to a chair in his own castle, now under human control. Eren, standing beside him, gazes at the countless orcs standing in front of the castle, surrounded by soldiers. He declares that he won't kill them. Instead, they will become slaves of the humans. As the orcs stare at him in confusion, Eren explains that they will work to provide services to the people in his territory, receiving food and hunting facilities in return. However, seeing the orcs' expressionless faces and receiving no response, Eren grows frustrated and threatens to treat them as he did their leader if they don't reply. Frightened, the orcs quickly comply. In response, Eren states that as punishment for wasting his time, and to make them reflect on their actions, they will be stripped of all the food in their storage. Some time later, Eren returns to his territory with all the food and resources the orcs possessed, causing his people to celebrate and praise him for his victory. Turning to Rommel, Eren instructs him to gather all the orcs and take them inside the portal created by Cheryl. The portal leads to a snowy region. There, Eren wields his great sword and slashes through the mountains, causing the creatures to tremble in fear at his immense power. As they kneel before the power of a dragon, Eren instructs them to raise their heads and tells them to remember what happened to the mountain, as well as their place in the world. The next day, Kuruk returns to his castle, revealing that the other members of his tribe, having not witnessed Eren's power, are preparing to seek revenge. Eren warns him sternly that if even a single orc rebels, he will eradicate their entire species. Complying, Kuruk flees, followed by his subordinates. Canis enters, remarking on how impressive it is that Eren has truly made the orcs his slaves. Eren explains that the orcs seem to have mistaken him for a dragon, which made it easier to control them. Canis, smiling at first, then warns him that dragons never forget those who impersonate them, asking if Eren is aware of that risk. Eren calmly explains that he never claimed to be a dragon. The orcs misunderstood on their own, so he decided to go along with it. Canis laughs, realizing the creatures were merely terrified by Eren's power. Eren agrees, stating that his powers are indeed strong enough to be mistaken for those of a dragon, which leaves Canis confused. Telling him not to worry, Eren instructs Canis to share the news with the others and informs him that they will have a meeting within the next hour. Canis complies and leaves, while Eren remains on the roof, deep in thought. He reflects on the real Eren's power to protect his people and questions if his promise to the king was that important. However, since he is not the true Eren, he decides to avoid the noble ways that only appear promising and instead use the ways of a butler to protect his territory. Remembering Zerone, the cruel emperor, he resolves to prepare for the upcoming fight that will decide their destiny. Later, at the meeting with all the high-ranking officials of the territory, Eren begins by stating that their success in dealing with the orcs was only possible because of Canis. Hearing this, Cheryl becomes sad and disappointed, feeling overlooked despite her significant efforts. Canis, however, humbly credits Eren for their ability to persuade the orcs. Frustrated by the lack of recognition, Cheryl speaks up, reminding everyone that she was the one launching the fireballs. Instead of acknowledging her contribution, Eren remarks that he didn't ask her to shoot and blames her for unnecessarily killing potential laborers. This only deepens Cheryl's frustration, leading her to tease him in response. Ignoring her, Eren shifts the focus to the main agenda, revealing that now that their usable land has increased fivefold, they must consider how to utilize it. He introduces his idea of developing dungeons on the newly acquired land, which shocks everyone present. Max, the territory's administrator, asks if Eren plans to use the dungeons as tourist attractions. In response, Eren turns to Canis, asking if the draft is ready. Canis nods, revealing that despite his busy schedule, he managed to complete the final draft. He then places the blueprint for the dungeon development project on the table. As the members examine the detailed document, they are astonished by Canis's work. Aston, after reviewing the entire document, begins to clap in appreciation but points out that the profit model is missing by 2%. Confused, Canis asks for clarification. Eren then reveals that the missing element is the necessary viciousness to trap adventurers visiting the dungeons by throwing them into the pit of light and turning them into slaves. Shocked by Eren's suggestion, Max argues that such a plan will ruin his reputation as royalty. Eren counters, asserting that survival takes precedence over maintaining a good image. He argues that even royals, despite their status, would face dire consequences if they couldn't secure their basic needs, such as food. He emphasizes the necessity of ensuring everyone's survival over concerns about reputation. Hearing this, Canis laughs, noting that Eren transcends conventional logic. He assures Eren that he will incorporate this method into the plan. Max, feeling disappointed and considering it madness, grows concerned about the future of their territory if such a plan continues. The next day, Aaron leaves the castle to survey the territory. After inspecting the condition, he turns to the treasurer and asks if the sanitation project is truly being implemented. The treasurer confirms, stating that he is dedicating all his efforts and even using the winter food budget to support the project, trusting that it will ultimately bring more food to the territory. Hearing that, Aaron reveals that he is not going to do anything like that, and they should have at least a little leftover budget. The treasurer asks what he means by leftover budget. They have already spent a lot on buying armor for the orc raid. However, looking at his surroundings, the treasurer states that their territory has already become much cleaner, and they will not need to spend more money on maintaining hygiene. Enraged to hear that, Aaron asserts that they need to keep their environment clean in order to avoid diseases spreading, telling him to never stop the process. Disappointed to hear that, the treasurer remarks that they are all going to die at this rate of spending, while being aware of the possibility of failing to keep up the sanitation as well as arrange food in the future. Aaron wonders if there is a solution to this problem. While he is wondering, a soldier comes to Rommel, informing him of a priest illegally performing surgery again. Hearing that, Aaron quickly turns around with surprise, looking at a huge crowd of people gathered at a distance. Walking towards the crowd, Rommel tells him that the Vivian Order priest must be healing people again. Hearing about the Vivian Orders, Aaron remembers that it is the religion that gets overshadowed by the Purse Order and disappears in a few years. However, hearing about healing, he suddenly gets an idea. Meanwhile, a soldier goes near the crowd of people and declares that a person from an authorized religion healing people on this land is strictly forbidden. Hearing that, the people turn around and start to leave the place quietly. Sitting in the middle of the crowd, the priest, who turns out to be Cecilia, apologizes, saying that she was not aware of it, and starts to walk away. Calling out to her, the father of the child she was healing states that his child is going to die if she leaves like this, while other people also start protesting against this rule. Going near the soldier, the person starts to express his anger, asking if they are going to take responsibility if his son dies. Trying to calm them down, Cecilia states that they are going to return some other day and it is best for all the people to go back. However, just then, Aaron calls her out, telling her to stop, causing her to turn around in confusion. Walking towards them, Aaron states that they can continue healing, making them surprised. Remarking them to be good people helping his citizens, he says that he does not have any reason to kick them out and they can continue what they have been doing. Hearing that, all of the people start to celebrate, while Cecilia expresses her gratitude for such a decision. Aaron instructs that the rest of the priests can continue with the treatment and Cecilia should follow him, and she complies. Considering that their affiliation to a different religion does not matter to him until they are providing treatment for free, Aaron decides to make them continue healing like this. Sometime later, in the conference room, Cecilia expresses her excitement by embracing him, making him shocked to see her doing this. Saints should not do this. With her face beaming with happiness, Cecilia asks him if he was serious about his decision to build a temple on his land. In response, Aaron states that there is no reason for him not to do that, causing the treasurer to become frustrated. Losing his patience, he states that he cannot allow it since they have no remaining budget and if they raise a temple right now, they will have no emergency funds left over. Aaron states that they also have some additional funds hidden, telling him to use those. Frustrated to hear that, the treasurer states that this was the money the previous emperor left for them to use in difficult situations. However, Aaron simply replies that the situation is also dire, leaving no choice for him but to comply. Hearing all that, Cecilia begins to express her gratitude to him, but he interrupts her, telling her to think about thanking him after hearing his complete condition. Hearing that, she becomes a little confused while Aaron gives a smile, revealing that he has a condition for building a temple on his land. Aaron states that he has a condition for building the temple and reveals it to be the condition of holy water production. He mentions having heard about the possibility of creating holy water at the temple and asks Cecilia to promise to produce it and help develop the territory. Cecilia quickly agrees to the request, promising to produce the holy water. Eren specifies that she will have to produce it free of charge and in any quantity he desires, to which she also agrees. A few weeks later, Canis rushes to Eren with news that the orcs have seemingly discovered a hidden dungeon near the fortress they inhabit. Hearing that, Eren asks what kind of dungeon it is, and Canis reveals that Kuruk has described it as a useless, abandoned dungeon. Surprised by this information, Eren inquires whether the dungeon does not appear in ancient documents or if the owner's name is not listed anywhere in the agreement. Canis mentions that they couldn't find any reference to it and that after its owner disappeared, it has become a den for various monsters. Eren asks if Canis plans to develop the place, to which Canis responds that he doesn't see any way to bring in adventurers, no matter how he looks at it. Revealing his idea to be related to the elixir of eternal life, Eren states that they will spread a rumor that a cure-all potion exists in that dungeon. Asking if he is curious, Eren tells him to follow him and takes him to the temple, where different priests are busy healing the people. Looking at Cecilia, Canis becomes surprised, sensing the strong divine power surrounding her body, and wonders if such a thing could occur in this kind of place. Meanwhile, Cecilia turns around, finds them standing behind her, and quickly gets up and runs towards them, feeling the intensity of the light emanating from her body getting stronger as she comes near. Canis looks at everyone acting normally and wonders if they are unable to see that power. Meanwhile, Eren gets out of Cecilia's way, causing her to crash to the ground. She quickly gets up, feeling a little embarrassed. Feeling a bit awkward himself, Eren asks about how the construction is going and if there are any problems. In response, Cecilia states that they are about halfway done, causing him to ask if she can create the holy water in that case. Agreeing, she turns to the statue of the divine and starts praying, causing the water placed in front of the statue to start shining brightly. Observing this, Canis is astonished, realizing that this kind of divine power couldn't belong to a human and wonders about Cecilia's true identity. Meanwhile, Eren takes a small amount of the water and gives it to the treasurer, suggesting that it will have the best effect on him due to his old age and sensitivity. Taking the water from him, the treasurer states that a person can never be sustained by just drinking water unless it's the Empire's finest healing potion. However, as soon as he takes a sip, he starts feeling greatly refreshed and becomes as energetic as a young man, commenting that he feels 5 years younger than his age. The old man remarks that it seems to be precisely like the healing potion, astounded by its impact. Eren turns to Cecilia, who stands holding his arm and becomes startled, quickly moving away. Considering the effectiveness of the holy water to be extraordinary, Eren realizes how significant Cecilia is for their goals. He calls out to Canis, who steps forward to listen. Approaching him, Eren whispers if there will be any problems if they use this water to spread rumors about the elixir of eternal life. In response, Canis states that there isn't a single place on the entire continent where holy water is as effective as this, and it should suffice to fulfill their purpose. With the supply settled, Eren states that they should now prepare to conquer the dungeon, remarking that it is completely all right. Cecilia states that she wants to introduce him to someone, making him confused about who it is. Cecilia reveals it to be the Holy Knight Captain of the Vivian Order, causing Eren to express his surprise and ask if the Vivian Order also has warriors. She explains that, unlike other warriors, the knights belonging to the Holy Order specialize in defense. They cloak their bodies and divine power under masks, neutralizing their opponent's attacks with their defense power, which is considered to be equivalent to an entire castle. However, she feels a little sad, stating that she is the only remaining captain in the entire order. Eren comes closer and asks if that's why they decided to come to this territory. Just then, someone calls out to him from behind, prompting him to turn around and see a woman dressed as a knight, stating that a person like him cannot approach the saintess. Confused by this remark, Eren gazes at her silently while she mentions that she came to the territory because she heard a temple was to be built, but in reality, it's a very weak territory. She considers the territory to be in a very hopeless condition, prompting Cecilia to interrupt, addressing her as Lady Bianca and stating that she cannot behave this way towards the Lord. Meanwhile, Eren shares his confusion about her calling it a weak territory, to which Bianca responds that, unlike Cecilia, she will only show loyalty to those who are strong. Eren asks if she has ever sworn loyalty to anyone in that case, to which she replies that no one has ever been strong enough for that. Responding with a smirk, Eren asks if she would like to make a bet, which leaves her confused. Eren states that the person who lands 3 good hits during their fight will be considered the winner, and if she loses, she will have to swear her allegiance to him. Hearing this, Bianca also smirks, considering him a very arrogant individual, while Eren responds with a smile. Sometime later, both Eren and Bianca stand face to face with each other, ready to fight. The battle starts with one of the knights stating that there is no point in watching, as the results are obvious. Another knight gives a sigh, while another states that, without even using his sword, their lord utilized the sleep destruction magic to defeat the orc, which proves how powerful he is. Considering that there is a possibility for Bianca to get severely injured, stating that there is nothing else they can do, one of them suggests calling the castle knight order captain. Meanwhile, Eren picks a twig from the ground, causing Bianca to get enraged, remarking that it was very arrogant to go against her with a mere twig. In response, Eren states that even the twig will be sad upon hearing those words from her, causing her anger to intensify. Putting her shield in front of her, she starts to pray to the divine to bestow upon her the power to destroy her enemy. A few moments later, an overwhelming energy starts coursing through her veins, while Eren, who seems bored after watching her, asks why she is taking so long to prepare for the attack, telling her to stop teasing him. Bianca proceeds forward at great speed while Eren raises the twig in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy. He then brings it forward and launches an attack, causing the powerful strike to hit Bianca's shield, leading her to crash to the ground. Teasing her again, Eren states that she cannot look down on the twig if she is going to faint after a single attack. With that, he strikes the shield with the twig again, causing it to start cracking and then shatter apart, leaving Bianca shocked and realizing how incredibly powerful he is. Bianca kneels down in front of him, while Eren repeats the condition of winning, to land 3 strikes on the opponent. He brings his twig forward and launches the first hit, causing her to crash to the ground while all the soldiers cover their eyes, unable to witness such cruelty. Meanwhile, Eren launches the second hit, causing her intense pain, yet she has no choice but to bear it. Launching the third and final hit, Eren causes her to crash to the ground, stating that he has met the condition of landing 3 hits. Eren warns her never to insult him or his territory again. However, instead of feeling embarrassed, Bianca gets up and turns to him with a smile, stating that he is the first person to have been mean to her. As she is about to say something further, Cecilia covers her mouth, causing Eren to become confused. Apologizing for her behavior, Cecilia states that Bianca must be confused after the battle. While feeling a little awkward, Eren states that it is all right and turns to Rommel, instructing him to gather those who went for the dungeon subjugation. After some time, the troops gather in front of him along with Cheryl, Canis, and Rommel himself, remarking that there are only 100 soldiers who can be mobilized, excluding those on territory defense. Eren remarks that this is very little, stating that the population of their territory is 5,000. Canis explains that their protection can only be possible if they mobilize only 1/10 of the soldiers. Agreeing with this, Eren states that they need to attract more population, for which they will need to develop their territory further. Canis assures him that he will formulate a strategy to do so. Just then, Eren suddenly remembers that in his past life, around this time, because of what happened earlier, Count Grey and Count of Men's territory had a large number of migrants. Watching him engrossed in his thoughts, Canis calls out to him, causing him to realize that he had to address the soldiers. Turning to the soldiers, he states that they are going on a mission of dungeon subjugation, in which they will capture the place and dig up the treasures. Raising their weapons in determination, all of them then begin to move towards the dungeon. As he reaches near the dungeon, Kuruk, who is waiting for him at the entrance, kneels down, paying his respect. Surprised to see him, Eren dismounts the horse and asks if everything is all right. Kuruk, who seems a little worried, replies that there is something wrong, making Eren confused. Entering the dungeon, Kuruk leads them to a place where a lot of orcs are lying dead on the ground. Kuruk reveals that they started to act weird all of a sudden. Calling out to them, Cheryl, who seems to be feeling cold, asks if everyone is feeling this way or if it is just her. Just then, the orcs that were lying dead on the ground suddenly begin to rise with fierce killing intent in their eyes, making them confused. Watching Eren and his fellows in front of them, the orcs raise their weapons and start to rush towards them to attack. Seeing that, Kuruk becomes shocked, considering that Eren will annihilate their race if they do that. In order to stop them, he proceeds forward and raises his weapon in the air, hitting one of them who falls upon the rest of the monsters, leading them all to crash to the ground. However, as soon as they crash to the ground, a spirit suddenly appears, causing Canis to become shocked and reveal that they are ghosts. Just then, the ghost starts to rush towards Kuruk, who tries to hit it just like the orcs. However, instead of falling back, it passes through Kuruk's weapon and proceeds forward towards Eren at great speed. Watching that, Eren pulls out his sword and blocks the ghost with it, causing it to disperse. Then a lot of similar but smaller ghosts start to move around them, making them shocked as they watch the countless ghosts swarm them. Cheryl becomes frustrated and summons a fireball with her staff. Watching this, the ghosts suddenly become startled and, instead of running away, start to rush towards Cheryl. However, before they can get near her, Eren comes forward and slashes them with his sword while Cheryl uses her magic of fire spray simultaneously. As a result, the fireball she summoned begins to spew fire, burning all the spirits and causing them to disappear. Just then, Rommel calls out to Eren and Cheryl, and they turn around in confusion, finding him and Kuruk fighting with the ghosts. Rommel remarks that these creatures are impossible to cut through with a sword. Stating that he forgot to mention something, Canis reveals that since they are spirits, only magic can work against them. Hearing that, Rommel becomes frustrated, asking why he did not mention this earlier. Meanwhile, Cheryl brings her staff forward, telling everyone to stand still and causing numerous fireballs to emerge from it and strike the weapons of all their fellows. This causes their weapons to get imbued with magic powers, while the wooden weapon of Kuruk burns to ashes, making him shocked. Proceeding forward with their strong weapons, Rommel and Eren then start to deal with the ghosts, killing them one by one while spreading great destruction in the dungeon. Realizing that the humans have started to defeat them, the ghosts combine, letting out a huge scream that causes them to cover their ears. As a result of combining, they transform into a gigantic creature that is much more powerful than the rest. Proceeding forward, the creature is about to launch an attack when Eren suddenly appears and launches a powerful slash, causing the creature to disappear instantly. Walking towards the book rack at a distance, Canis remarks that these creatures were not there to fight but were protecting something. Going through the books, Cheryl suddenly finds something and calls out to Eren, telling him to take a look. Confused, he turns to her and finds a book in her hand titled Legacy of the Ancients. She reveals that during the era of the Demon Empire, a group of people called monks practiced something in this place. Reading further, she finds it to be a guide related to mental strength training and becomes astonished, while Eren becomes confused about its meaning. Cheryl explains that, unlike magicians who normally use magic, these people introduced a completely different idea called mental strength. Hearing about the mental strength training, Eren expresses his astonishment, remarking that this is the first time he has heard of such a technique. He recalls that in his past life, this method was known to increase the capacity for storing mana within the body, even with age. Turning to Canis, Eren inquires if he has heard of anything like this before. Canis explains that if Cheryl's description is accurate, it means even normal people can acquire magical abilities through mental strength training. Eren gets the idea of training all the troops and inhabitants of his territory to use magic through this technique. However, Canis argues that releasing such important information might not be beneficial, pointing to the destruction spread throughout the dungeon. He suggests that the method could be either orthodox or have significant side effects. Eren agrees and decides to keep this information to himself. Proceeding to the next floors of the dungeon, they continue exploring and gain valuable treasures. After completing the exploration, Eren turns to Kuruk, instructing him to take half of the treasure and leave the rest for everyone else. Canis then asks if he can take the gold. Confused, Eren asks what Canis plans to do with it. Canis explains that the dungeon's ordinary layout makes it difficult to create a sense of suspense for adventurers. Eren agrees and states that he wants additional funds to add more interesting features to the dungeon. After some time, the renovation process of the dungeon begins under Canis's supervision. After setting up the basics, Canis activates the powers of a dragon and spreads his energy throughout the dungeon. As a result, the scattered bones join together to form gigantic skeletons, and the spirits of the ghosts rise again, spreading throughout the place. To add the final touches, he adds something to the holy water in one of the compartments. After tasting it, he remarks that its taste is exquisite and that it increases lifespan by 1 year. With a smirk, he states that the only thing left is to attract customers driven mad by greed, and laughs loudly, his voice echoing throughout the entire dungeon. Some time later, a group of adventurers arrives at the gates of the Brahn territory. After getting their identities approved, they step inside, remarking on the heavy rain. The leader of the group notes that winter doesn't seem to be ending soon and observes that the soldiers have new armor. In response, a woman in the group suggests that they might have discovered a relic in their newly made dungeon, which has become a new source of income. The leader points to an extravagant guest house and asks if this is also a result of the money. The woman remarks that this indicates how warmly they are welcoming adventurers like them, and they will also contribute by spending as much as they can. The leader moves towards the guest house, opens the door and enters. The owner of the guest house recognizes him as Gerald and welcomes him. Gerald asks if the owner recently remodeled the entire building, and the owner reveals that it is all debt and explains that a new dungeon has recently opened. He suggests that they take the opportunity to enter it before everyone else. Remarking on the owner's ambition, Gerald looks on to ensure no one is listening, then gets closer and asks if he knows anything about the dungeon. The owner states that he has only heard about the dungeon's contents but will be the first to enter it. Hearing this, Gerald gives him 1 gold coin and instructs him to prepare some food and drinks for their group. The next morning, Eren sits in his room practicing mental strength techniques from the book he found. Despite the dragon's blessing within him, he seeks a technique he can control on his own, aware of the risks involved. While he is busy cultivating the energy, someone suddenly calls out to him, causing him to open his eyes and find Cecilia standing before him. Startled by her sudden appearance, Eren asks what she is doing there. Cecilia presents him with a plate of sandwiches, saying she brought it for him. Eren, surprised, accepts the plate, and Cecilia mentions that she will be leaving. As Cecilia departs, another soldier informs Eren about the arrival of adventurers, which excites him. The next day, the adventurers head towards the dungeon, which is named the Shrine of Aten. Upon reaching the dungeon's gate, one of them reads the sign stating that entry requires a fee of 10 gold coins. The adventurers pay the gatekeepers, who then give them a document confirming their right to enter and instructions on maintaining safety until they leave. After letting them in, the gatekeepers block the entrance again, informing the remaining adventurers that they cannot enter without this proof. Gerald, one of the adventurers, protests that they've already purchased the papers, but the soldiers clarify that the fee is 10 gold coins per person, not per group. The adventurers are shocked, calling it a scam. The soldier responds that he will convey their concerns to the Lord, while noting that the elixir of eternal life within the dungeon might run out at any moment. With no other option, Gerald pays the fee for his entire group. Upon entering the dungeon, they encounter a person selling holy water, which he claims is necessary to defeat the creatures inside. Gerald, showing a bottle of holy water he already has, is told that the Vivian Church's holy water is superior. Annoyed but convinced, Gerald buys the holy water. As they proceed, they come across another board displaying a fee of 100 gold coins per person for an emergency dispatch request. The adventurers question this fee, but the seller explains that it is not unfair to pay for saving one's life with just 100 gold coins. Gerald asks what happens if they don't make a request, and the seller replies that they will not be charged. Considering the potential rewards of obtaining the elixir, the adventurers accept the conditions and enter the dungeon. Meanwhile, Aaron and Canis, watching the adventurers through a magic sphere, find the situation amusing. Aaron calls out to Kuruk, suggesting that the undead creatures might become boring due to the holy water, and instructs him to do something else. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the dungeon, the group of adventurers keeps diligently fighting against the undead monsters. After consuming the holy water they bought, Gerald feels relieved, remarking that it would have been very tough for them if they did not have this elixir. Looking at the staircase leading to the third floor, they wonder if it is the last floor, when they suddenly hear a sound and turn around, finding another ghost coming in their direction. Excited to see it, one of the adventurers remarks that it is very unoriginal and throws the bottle of holy water in its direction. However, instead of getting eliminated by the holy water, the ghost pushes the person, causing him to crash into the basement, leaving all others shocked and remarking it to be a mutant ghost. Gerald tells all of them to prepare for the battle. However, just then, countless similar creatures start to appear one after the other, causing them to realize that they have no choice but to run away. Turning on all of them, they start to descend from the stairs and reach the next floor while trembling with fear. After they leave, all the ghosts remove their masks and turn out to be Kuruk and his fellows, who start laughing at the adventurers. As the adventure party hurries down to the third floor, their leader, Gerald, pauses to glance back up at the second floor. With a sigh of relief, he wonders aloud if the mutant ghost they encountered earlier will be unable to follow them to their current location. Anna, the mage in the group, notices the darkness enveloping them, and promptly casts a light spell to illuminate the surroundings. As the light reveals their environment, Gerald's anxiety grows. He realizes they are in a labyrinth, a setting notorious for being an ideal habitat for dangerous creatures like minotaurs. Gerald turns to the other party members who are attending to Athos, who was injured after being attacked by Kuruk from the second floor. Gerald inquires about Athos's condition, and the person checking on him shakes his head, indicating that Athos is not in a good state. Gerald decides that they should leave Athos behind for now and prioritize finding the spring of eternal life, which he believes to be less dangerous. The party then begins navigating the labyrinth on the third floor in search of the spring. As they move forward, Gerald hears a noise from behind and urgently warns his party. The party quickly turns around to see 3 spears flying towards them, but they manage to block the spears with relative ease. As the party looks around, they spot 3 orcs who have thrown the spears and are now charging toward them. Gerald urgently instructs his party to run from the orcs. In the ensuing chaos, the orcs throw more spears, injuring 2 party members who fall to the ground. Gerald quickly picks up the injured members by their arms, warning them that if they fall behind, they will die. Despite their injuries, the party continues to flee, but they soon encounter a fork in the path. Gerald is momentarily unsure of which way to go. Meanwhile, the orcs, still in pursuit, launch their spears down the left path, confirming their direction. Gerald directs his party to take the right path. As they move to the right, Gerald instructs Anna to block the path. Anna casts a spell to create a wall of ice, successfully blocking the orcs' advance. The orcs begin attacking the ice wall, and Gerald commands Anna to reinforce the ice barrier by casting her spell once more. Following Gerald's instructions, Anna casts the world of ice spell again, reinforcing the ice wall and making it thicker and more durable. However, as they progress, the party members in the front are struck by arrows from skeletons, causing them to fall in pain. Anna responds by using her continual light spell, which causes the skeletons to vanish. Amid the chaos, one of the party members accidentally triggers a trap. The walls begin to collapse, and water starts flooding in, sweeping all the party members away. After some time, Gerald wakes Anna and points in a specific direction. Anna, upon seeing what Gerald is indicating, reacts with surprise and excitement, exclaiming that they have found the spring of eternal life. As the party members see the Minotaur standing in front of the spring of eternal life, Anna is shocked and urgently tells her party to run away. The party members turn to see the Minotaur wielding an axe and advancing toward them. Overwhelmed by fear, Gerald collapses to the ground, convinced they are doomed. In his moment of despair, a sample device he had pocketed falls to the ground. Gerald recalls that he was told pressing the 3 shiny stones on the device simultaneously would rescue him and his party, but he hesitates, thinking the cost of 100 gold per person is too high. With the Minotaur closing in, Gerald decides to act. Despite his previous hesitation, he presses all 3 buttons on the device, hoping for a last-minute escape. The 2 party members with shields attempt to block the Minotaur's attack, but are completely overpowered. The force of the Minotaur's blow sends them crashing into the wall. In the midst of the chaos, Anna casts an ice bolt spell that hits the Minotaur, causing it to pause briefly. However, the Minotaur quickly recovers, grabs Anna, and slams her to the ground. As Gerald continues to frantically press the buttons on the device, he shouts in desperation, "Why aren't they coming?" Meanwhile, the Minotaur raises its axe, preparing to attack Gerald. In a state of terror, Gerald closes his eyes, resigning himself to the thought that he is about to die. Just as Gerald is about to face the Minotaur's attack, a group of knights arrives and intervenes, blocking the Minotaur's strike. Frightened by the knights, the Minotaur flees, dropping its axe as it retreats. One of the knights approaches Gerald and asks if he is all right. Gerald, visibly shaken, questions if he looks okay. The knight reassures him that, despite the situation, he saved Gerald's life and the spring of eternal life. Gerald then stands up and fills a bottle with water from the spring. The knight inquires if they should leave now, and upon receiving Gerald's approval, the knights begin to escort Gerald and his party back toward the exit. Meanwhile, in a different part of the labyrinth, Kira comforts the Minotaur, who is crying and distressed by the recent events. When Gerald emerged from the dungeon, he exclaimed in relief that they had survived. However, his joy quickly turned to confusion when he saw priests waiting for him. Surprised, he asked why the priests were there. The priests, smiling, told him they were there to provide treatment and handed him a document to sign with his thumbprint. Gerald read the document carefully and found several conditions. Special treatment costs 300 gold per person. Liability disclaimer: they guarantee survival, but are not responsible for any after effects of the treatment. Payment terms: if payment is not made immediately after treatment, a 50% interest rate per month will be applied to the fees. Debt consequences: if he cannot pay the debt, his body will belong to Aaron, the Lord of Brand territory, for 10 years. Gerald, calculating the financial implications, realized that with a 50% monthly interest rate on the 300 gold principal, he would need to pay an additional 150 gold per month until the debt was settled. This realization was cut short by the priests, who urgently reminded him that his comrades were dying and that he needed to act quickly. Flustered and seeing no other option, Gerald signed the document with his thumbprint. Later, Canis returned to the castle with a box full of gold coins and reported to Aaron that they had taken everything as instructed, including some useful slaves. Aaron praised everyone for their dedication and success, attributing their achievements to their unwavering loyalty. Seeing the gold coins, the old man Cain asked Aaron if it was a dream. Aaron assured him it was real and proposed taking advantage of their success by exploring a second dungeon. Canis and Cain agreed. Aaron recognized the profitability of this venture and used the funds to support the local people and build a town for adventurers. After a busy winter, Aaron and the people of Brand territory established an adventurers' village named Aten. From the tower overlooking the new village, Aaron reflected that despite their progress, the village still lacked sufficient manpower and noted that they couldn't rely solely on orcs to populate it. Just then, a bird arrived with a letter attached to its leg. Aaron untied and opened it, discovering that a gold mine had been found on the border between Count Grey and Count Omen, with a high likelihood of ownership disputes. Aaron smiled, thinking that attracting more people would solve their manpower issues. Later, in the meeting room, Rommel, shocked, inquired about the territorial war. Aaron confirmed, explaining that the gold mine's discovery on the contested border was an opportunity they couldn't let Count Grey and Count Omen monopolize. Rommel pointed out that while the Count's boundary was technically part of Brand territory, it had long been controlled by Count Grey and Count Omen. Aaron acknowledged this and saw the situation as an opportunity to assert his claim, especially since both counts were contesting ownership of the gold mine. Rommel expressed concern about the feasibility of going to war, noting that the combined forces of the two counts would significantly outnumber theirs. Aaron responded by emphasizing the importance of the gold mine, not just as a resource, but as a means to assert dominance. He reminded Rommel that the two counts were originally vassals of the Duke of Brahn, and now they were his vassals, implying that he had the right to reclaim and control what was his. Cheryl expressed concern that the conflict might draw the Emperor's attention, possibly leading him to intervene. Aaron reassured her that with a justifiable cause, the Emperor wouldn't interfere and might even prefer that Aaron lose the war against the counts. He acknowledged, however, that the real issue was their military strength. Turning to Cain, Aaron was surprised when Cain slammed his hand on the table and declared that they should eliminate the counts who were unlawfully claiming territories granted to them by the Emperor. Aaron, shocked by Cain's intense reaction, asked for clarification. Cain explained that his motivation was not the gold mine, but asserting their rightful claim. He insisted he would do anything, even sell his soul, to support Aaron's cause, urging him to focus on the war. Just then, a knight burst into the meeting room with an emergency report. Count Grey and Count Omen had met in front of the mountain where the gold mine was discovered. Aaron, recognizing the significance of the development, ordered Rommel to gather the knight order immediately. They would depart right away to take action. On the mountain, Count Grey and Count Omen were embroiled in a heated argument. Count Grey, furious, shouted that he had been managing the mountain for 10 years. Count Omen countered aggressively, claiming that the land had belonged to his ancestors long before that. Count Grey, enraged, insisted that the mountain had been in his family for generations. Count Omen retorted, accusing Grey of being a fraud, pointing out that Grey had only recently claimed ownership. Their dispute escalated as they continued to hurl insults and accusations at each other. At that moment, Aaron, accompanied by his knights, arrived at the mountain where both counts were present. The soldiers of the counts, upon seeing Aaron's flag, identified it as that of the Duke of Brahn. Inside their tent, the counts wondered about the Duke's unexpected arrival. As they exited the tent, Aaron approached them on horseback, causing a cloud of dust to billow. Both counts shielded their faces from the dust. Aaron dismounted and asked them, "How are you guys?" In response, the counts bowed deeply and paid their respects, acknowledging him as the Duke. Aaron, seething with anger, confronted the counts aggressively. He shouted at them, "Now, you rotten bastards! What are you doing on my land? Get lost right now." The counts were taken aback by his outburst. Aaron continued, asserting his claim by stating that according to Empire law, the mine and any undeveloped land in question belonged to him. He demanded they leave immediately. Count Ormond, infuriated by Aaron's declaration, began to protest, but Count Gayle intervened. He explained to Aaron that the land had been under their control since the time of their ancestors, and suddenly claiming it as Aaron's would place them in a difficult situation. Aaron, undeterred, drew his sword and confronted them furiously, accusing them of defying the royal family's orders and declaring that their insistence on the land was tantamount to having a death wish. Seeing the tension escalate, with both Aaron's knights and the count's soldiers drawing their swords, Canis intervened. He proposed a resolution to avoid further conflict on the spot, a territory war. This suggestion took both counts by surprise. Canis mentioned that he had heard both counts were preparing for war. Count Gayle protested, noting that the preparation was initially only between the two counts. Aaron then proposed a solution where each side would mobilize 1,000 troops. He added that, given his perceived disadvantage, if he won, the counts would have to relinquish both of their cities. The counts exchanged nervous glances upon hearing the terms of Aaron's proposal. Count Gayle asked for a moment to deliberate, and both counts retreated behind the tent. There, Count Gayle acknowledged that Aaron's claim to the land was officially recognized by Empire law, making it difficult for the royal family to side with them if Aaron invoked these laws. Count Ormond agreed with this assessment. Count Gayle then proposed a plan to address the situation. Once they had dealt with Aaron, they should split the profits from the gold mine equally. Count Ormond agreed and suggested formalizing their agreement to also divide any additional profits from any other gold or silver mines discovered. Canis, observing the counts, expressed doubt to Aaron, suggesting that the stakes of losing two villages might be too high for the counts to accept. Aaron, smiling, reassured Canis by saying, "Don't worry, there's no end to human greed." When Canis asked how Aaron was so confident, Aaron revealed that the gold mine was not just any mine, but an incredibly large one. He then whispered to Canis that this was merely a rumor he had spread. Canis, surprised, exclaimed, "No way." Aaron explained that his true goal was to secure the two villages, and the exaggerated claims about the gold mine were part of his strategy. A month earlier, Aaron received a letter informing him that there were no signs of conflict between Count Gayle and Count Ormond. Reflecting on the situation, Aaron thought to himself, "I think it was around this time. Even though I'm relying on decades-old memories, it seems the nobles have no intention of fighting. If they lack a reason, I can create one myself." Determined to stir up trouble, Aaron decided to take matters into his own hands. He wrote a letter and gave instructions to spread a specific rumor that a large gold deposit had been discovered within the mines controlled by both Count Gayle and Count Ormond. This would serve as the catalyst for the conflict he needed. In the present, Count Gayle addressed Aaron, stating that they accepted his condition for the territorial war. However, he added that they had two conditions of their own. The first was that they would choose the location of the battle, which would take place where they currently were. Aaron could choose the timing of the conflict. Aaron then inquired about the second condition. Count Gayle explained that if they won, they wanted the mountain containing their mine, along with both of their territories, to be excluded from the Bram dukedom. Additionally, this agreement would need to be formally written, signed, and notarized by the king himself. Aaron pretended to be shocked by the idea of being notarized by the king, just as Count Gayle had predicted. Gayle then quietly pointed out to Count Ormond that his prediction was correct. Count Gayle then made it clear that without notarization by the king, there would be no territorial war. Aaron appeared to consider this deeply and then agreed, stating that they would plan the battle for 1 month from now. He began signing the document. Seeing this, both counts believed they had outmaneuvered Aaron and that his agreement to their terms would seal his defeat. Aaron internally realizes that the knight is about to seek the king's permission to surrender their territory, a move that aligns perfectly with Aaron's own goals. As Aaron and the knight descend from the mountain, Canis voices a concern, acknowledging that while the plan is unfolding as Aaron intended, some challenges remain. When Aaron inquires about these issues, Canis points out two key problems. First, they only have about 500 troops, which is a relatively small force. Second, since the results of their actions will be reported directly to the king, it will be challenging for either Aaron or Lady Cheryl to influence the outcome significantly without drawing unwanted attention. Aaron acknowledges the situation, agreeing that the presence of orcs in their territory is already causing suspicion. He suggests that they might ask Lord Cain to hire mercenaries to bolster their forces. However, Canis points out another problem. There is no gold mine, and if Lord Cain, who is funding their war efforts, discovers this truth, he might do everything in his power to prevent the war from occurring. Aaron responds by considering that, while it could be difficult, they might still find a way to convince Lord Cain. He advises Canis to feign ignorance for the time being. Internally, Aaron hopes that Cheryl will successfully fulfill her part of the plan. As Aaron and his group approach the city gate from a distance, he notices a commotion there, which surprises him. At the gate, guards are brandishing their spears at a figure standing before them, telling the person that the Lord isn't present and to leave. The figure turns out to be an elf, who politely requests a meeting with the Lord. At that moment, Aaron arrives at the gate and demands to know what's happening. Recognizing him, the god addresses Aaron as my lord and acknowledges his return. The elf, hearing this, turns around and sees Aaron behind her, mounted on a horse. The elf, who introduces herself as Keisha, immediately kneels before Aaron, pleading for his help. She reveals that she is the daughter of the elf chief. Aaron questions why the elves are now seeking his assistance after having killed innocent people within his territory. He explains that the elves from the far north, living in the forests near the dragon's nest, have chosen to isolate themselves from other species, including humans, in order to create a peaceful environment for themselves. While the elves have tried to protect their peace, their militant methods have made it difficult for the people of Bram territory, including Aaron, to forgive them for their past actions. She reveals that their village was recently attacked and devastated by undead forces. Keisha offers to assist Aaron if he helps them this one time, promising that the elves will then welcome his people as friends. Aaron asks if she is proposing an alliance and reflects that he needs to address both the undead and the elves eventually. He agrees to help but indicates that an alliance alone is not sufficient. Keisha responds that they have some gold, which humans use, and are willing to provide it as part of their offer. Aaron rejects Keisha's offer of gold and demands instead that the elves become citizens of the Bram territory. Keisha is initially surprised by this request. Aaron then infers that if she has come alone, she must be in command of her people and presses her to accept his offer. Keisha responds that she lacks the authority to make such a decision. Seeing her hesitation, Aaron decides to withdraw his proposal, prompting Keisha to quickly agree to his terms. Aaron instructs her to follow him to draft a contract. In the meeting room, when Keisha mentions Death Knight, Rommel, Cain, and Max are shocked and rise from their seats in surprise. Keisha explains that the undead attacking her village were led by a Death Knight, accompanied by thousands of zombies and skeletons. Aaron suspects that the attack might have been orchestrated by demons or a high-ranked necromancer and realizes he must act quickly to save any remaining elves. He orders a gathering at the orc stronghold in 3 hours. Rommel is tasked with preparing the night order, Cecilia with organizing the priests, and Bianca with mobilizing the holy knights. Aaron and Canis will head to the orc stronghold immediately. With urgency, He rallies everyone to move swiftly to rescue the elves and secure their future citizens. Skeletons are attempting to breach the elf village, while the elves employ various spells to prevent their entry. An elf uses ice magic to create a slippery layer on the wall, causing the skeletons to slide off when they attempt to climb. In response, the Death Knight uses his magic to gather the skeletons' bones and hurl them at the wall, shattering the ice and allowing the undead to advance. As the skeletons and zombie elves begin climbing the walls, the elf chief tries to use plant magic to obstruct their progress. Despite her efforts, the magical spell proves ineffective against the relentless assault. An elf suggests to the chief that they need fire to counter the undead. The elf chief, feeling conflicted but resolute, prays for forgiveness from the spirits of the forest before giving the order to burn the attackers. Fireballs are launched, incinerating the enemies near the wall. Undeterred, the Death Knight commands a new wave of zombies to attack. As the zombies charge towards the wall, raindrops begin to fall, destroying them. The Death Knight realizes that the rain is actually holy water being dropped from gliders, providing a powerful defense against the undead. Earlier, Eren had instructed the glider squad to position themselves above the gate. As the gliders reached their target and the zombies came into range, Eren ordered the release of holy water. The soldiers followed the command, showering the attacking zombies with holy water. Next, Eren directed the knights to charge toward the elf village using the shortest route available. The knights advanced swiftly, engaging and defeating any zombies obstructing their path. Noticing the advance of the Vivian Knight Order, the Death Knight casts another spell to raise additional zombies, which begin charging toward them. Bianca, the captain of the Vivian Knight Order, commands her knights to position themselves behind their shields and begins a prayer. O Vivian, grant me the power to decimate our enemies. In response to her prayer, a golden ray of light descends upon the Vivian Knights and envelops them. As the zombies approach and make contact with the light, they begin to vanish, unable to withstand its divine power. Meanwhile, Rommel advances toward the Death Knight, his sword infused with immense power. As Rommel's subordinate throws a bottle of holy water at the Death Knight, the distraction allows Rommel to close in. He swiftly rushes forward and slices the Death Knight in half. With the Death Knight defeated, the zombies and skeletons begin to tremble and falter. Seizing the moment, Rommel orders his knights to charge at full speed, capitalizing on the enemy's disarray. From a distance, Eren observes that they have successfully stopped all the undead from entering the elf village. With the immediate threat addressed, he turns to Canis and asks what their next step should be. Canis explains that the Death Knight was merely a field commander, and that they must eliminate the necromancer or demon controlling the undead. He notes that if it is a demon, Cecilia should be able to detect it. Eren turns to Cecilia, confirming her understanding. Cecilia responds that she has already located the source and indicates the direction they need to go. Eren notices dark energy emanating from the top of a distant hill, in the direction Cecilia indicated. Meanwhile, atop the hill, a flustered demon curses angrily about the destruction of her Death Knight, lamenting the difficulty of creating such a powerful puppet and expressing frustration at having to lead the army herself. As she begins casting a spell to reanimate the fallen, chanting, "Those who have fallen to the underworld, those who follow the will of death, follow my will once more," she is suddenly struck on the head and collapses. Dazed, the demon grabs her head and stands up, only to find a sword pointed at her neck, her surprise evident. Eren aggressively threatens her by pointing his sword and shouting about her interference with his future citizens. Reacting swiftly, she jumps back, prepares a spell, and marks Eren. In response, Eren skillfully uses his sword to cut through her spell, surprising her. Before she can counter, Eren stabs her, causing her to bleed. With her life at risk, Eren demands she choose between death or becoming his servant before her mana is depleted. The demon Eleanor realizes her mana is rapidly depleting and recognizes that Eren's power is extraordinary. When Eren doesn't get a response from her, He assumes she prefers death. Eleanor then asks for his name, and upon learning it's Aaron, she introduces herself as Succubus Eleanor. She agrees to become his subordinate. As she pledges her allegiance, a magic circle begins to glow on Aaron's sword. Meanwhile, the elves, seeing the undead retreat, start celebrating their victory over them. Canis searches for the elf chief, wondering about his absence. Just then, Aaron arrives with a woman on his horse and praises everyone for their efforts. Canis bows and inquires about the demon. Aaron responds that he couldn't kill her as she escaped, but reassures that she won't return soon. Cecilia, noticing the woman, questions her identity. Aaron explains that she was a hostage of the demon, and Cecilia, sensing a strong evil aura from her, suggests that they need to cleanse her. Aaron intervenes as Cecilia insists on cleansing Eleanor. Cecilia questions his reasoning, but Aaron requests that she hold off and promises to explain later. Earlier, after Eleanor became Aaron's subordinate, he instructed her to bring the undead back instead of destroying them. Eleanor was puzzled by this command, but Aaron clarified that he intended to use the undead as resources. Now, Aaron explains this plan to Cecilia, who accepts and understands his decision. Aaron thanks Cecilia and informs her that he has other matters to attend to. At this moment, the elf chief approaches Aaron to express gratitude, acknowledging that they would have been defeated without his help. Aaron responds that he was merely fulfilling the contract. The elf chief insists that he will also honor the contract, affirming that the elves do not lie. Aaron presents the contract and implies that it should be straightforward for the elves to become his subjects. The elves are stunned upon seeing the contract. At this moment, Keisha apologizes to the chief, explaining that the situation left her no choice but to comply with Aaron. Aaron then asks the chief if they are trying to break the contract. After a moment's consideration, the chief kneels before Aaron and agrees to serve him, asking how he should be addressed. Aaron responds that he prefers to be called my lord by all his subjects. Aaron integrates the 1,500 elves, who have lost half their population in the undead invasion, into the city of Brahn. The elf chief observes the empty village and is surprised. Aaron explains that the town is called Aten, a place for adventurers that often lacks labor, and mentions that the elves will need to find their own food supplies. The elf chief expresses concern, noting that they have only brought a few days' worth of provisions. Aaron offers the elf chief two options, a good deal and a bad deal. The chief chooses to hear the good deal first. Aaron proposes to provide a month's worth of food for 1,000 elves. The chief thanks him, but notes that this would leave 500 elves without food. Aaron clarifies that he will also cover the remaining 500 elves' food, but the bad deal requires selecting 500 elves capable of fighting and sending them to Brahn Castle within a week. Confused by Aaron's offer, the elf chief is taken aback. Aaron suggests that both deals are advantageous. Meanwhile, at the imperial capital Javan, Emperor Zerone is engaged in a game with the continent champion. The champion admits defeat and acknowledges that no one on the continent of Karen can surpass the emperor in skill. Emperor Zerone tells the continent champion that, as the champion, he would have ended the game quickly if he had fully committed. An old man then enters, informing Zerone that it's time for his afternoon duties as the vassals are waiting. Zerone expresses a desire to spend the rest of the day with his friend if there are no pressing matters. The old man replies that Count Grey and Count Ormond have requested notaries for the territorial war. Emperor Zerone, upon learning that the notary document concerns a territorial war with his nephew, Duke Aaron, decides to postpone the game with the continent champion. He leaves the room, thinking to himself about Aaron's apparent recklessness. In the meeting room, Zerone addresses the issue, mentioning that news of the Battle of Brahn in the north is already circulating widely within the empire. He seeks opinions on whether he should approve the territorial war with Aaron. Duke Gran, aligned with the emperor, observes Zerone's thoughts and comments with a smile. He supports Duke Aaron's right to assert his claim on the gold mine, arguing that the war should be approved. Duke Rainan, from the neutral faction, warns that the war is unfavorable for Eren, suggesting that if he loses, the Bran territory will be lost as well. In response, Duke Gran questions why there would be an issue with powerful figures waging war according to imperial law and challenges Rainan's opposition to the war, implying that it conflicts with imperial regulations. Duke Rainan acknowledges Duke Gran's point but reflects on his promise to protect the late Emperor's children. Emperor Zerone agrees with Rainan's concerns but concludes that they do not outweigh the need to uphold imperial law. He approves the territorial war and instructs for the official documents to be issued. Later, in the game room, someone knocks on the door, and Emperor Zerone invites him in. Duke Gran enters and responds to Emperor Zerone's summons. Zerone, intrigued, questions Gran about his apparent ability to read his thoughts during the discussion on the Bran territorial war. He expresses surprise that Gran, a relatively recent addition to the Emperor faction, seemed to understand his innermost thoughts. Gran acknowledges this, and Zerone conveys his pleasure, stating that having a powerful ally like Gran with aligned intentions is beneficial for ruling the empire. Duke Gran modestly attributes his insights to understanding that Zerone would make a law-compliant decision. Zerone then asks Gran for his prediction on the territorial war's outcome, wondering if the Count Union will win as expected. Gran interrupts, confidently asserting that the Union will indeed win, citing the significant numerical advantage 1,000 versus 2,000 as a decisive factor in Duke Eren's anticipated loss. Emperor Zerone expresses his unease about Eren's decision to engage in a seemingly unwinnable territorial war. Duke Gran, responding, mentions that one of his vassals owes a debt to Count Grey and suggests using this opportunity to repay the Count with 30 mage mercenaries. Gran assures Zerone that this action will be entirely legitimate and free from royal involvement. Zerone, impressed by Gran's insight, acknowledges that mages would indeed be a significant asset and laughs, internally agreeing that they will be more than sufficient. In the kingdom's capital, Jovan, Cheryl finished her shopping and was told by the manager, "They will be waiting for her, come again." As she walked away, she reflected on how refreshing shopping was for relieving stress and wondered where else she might go thrifting. Noticing her expensive clothes and jewelry and realizing she was unguarded, a group of thugs began to follow her. Cheryl quickly detected their presence and considered whether it was time to act on the task her brother had given her the previous day. Cheryl walked down a narrow, dark back alley, seeing the opportunity, the thugs quickly closing in on her. To deter them, she quickly pulled out her wand, cast a fire spell, and blasted the ground nearby to scare them off. Grabbing one of the thugs, she demanded, "She is not going to repeat herself, so listen carefully. Where is the secret casino?" The thugs then led her to an old castle basement. When the thug opened the door, a bright light spilled out, and Cheryl shielded her eyes until she adjusted to the illumination inside. She discovered a bustling scene with a large crowd gathered, betting on either Counts or Eren. Cheryl examined the board and saw the announcement for the main event, Battle in Bran, featuring Duke Eren against the alliance of Count Grey and Count Harmon, with betting open for 25 days. Delighted, she declared that she found it. A dwarf then took the stage, introducing the casino and expressing gratitude to the visitors. His speech was abruptly interrupted by someone in the crowd shouting at him and giving him a ticket. Upon hearing the insult, the dwarf became enraged and summoned the guards, who swiftly apprehended the disruptive individual despite his protests. The dwarf then addressed the crowd, clarifying that the man was not being removed for insulting him, but for wasting the valuable time of the customers. He emphasized that the establishment values their customers' time as if it were gold. This statement calmed the crowd. The dwarf then thanked them for their patience and announced that they would resume the predictions for the Battle of Bran, the day's main event and a highlight of the kingdom. After the dwarf's announcement, one person in the crowd placed a bet of 100 gold on Count Alliance, followed by another with a 500 gold bet on the same side. A third person then wagered an astonishing 100,000 gold on Count Alliance, and soon others joined in, quickly filling the Count Alliance bucket with their tickets. Amidst the flurry of bets, Cheryl raised her hand and shocked everyone by betting 3 million gold on Duke Aaron, a surprising choice given his low odds of winning. As she approached the dwarf, he addressed her, remarking that she might have misunderstood the situation, as they only accepted cash. He then inquired with curiosity and a hint of disbelief, if he may ask, how did she bring 3 million gold in here? Cheryl questioned the dwarf's skepticism, urging him to accept the money without further questions. To back her words, she picked a check out of her pocket and presented it to the dwarf. The dwarf, upon inspecting the check, recognized it and asked, "This is from the Moria Trade Group." Cheryl confirmed, explaining that the check was for 3 million gold from the prestigious Moria Trade Group, one of the 3 major trade organizations in the kingdom. After the interaction, Cheryl used a portal to return to Brand territory. There, she was surprised to find Aaron waiting for her. Curious about his presence, she asked why he was there. Aaron explained that he couldn't just sit idly by, given the importance of the situation, and then inquired about how things had gone. Cheryl informs Aaron that she made the bet at the secret casino as he requested. She then inquires about his progress in convincing Cain, reminding him that he borrowed money using a land deed as collateral. Aaron admits that he hasn't yet spoken to Cain because he was busy approving new citizens. However, he reassures Cheryl not to worry about convincing Cain, quoting the saying, "It's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission." Later, when Aaron finally speaks with Cain, Cain angrily confronts him, demanding to know what he means by saying there's no gold mine. Cain is also alarmed by the amount Aaron borrowed against the land deed. Aaron reveals that the sum is 3 million, leaving Cain even more frustrated and concerned. Cain, overwhelmed with emotion, begins to cry and laments how he has failed the former emperor. Feeling that Aaron has ruined everything the emperor entrusted to him, he despairs over how he will ever explain this failure. Aaron reassures Cain by saying he has a plan. However, Cain, still furious and distraught, shouts back, accusing Aaron of having a plan that will leave them all doomed to live on a small patch of land after everything falls apart. Growing irritated, Aaron abruptly stands up from his chair and, without further explanation, commands Cain to follow him, promising to show him what he has planned. Cain, now confused by Aaron's sudden assertiveness and mysterious promise, is left uncertain about what to expect. A little later, Aaron and Cain step through a portal created by Cheryl, emerging in a frozen land. Once there, Aaron demonstrates his power, which leaves Cain in shock. After showcasing his skills, Aaron confidently asks Cain if he saw it and questions why Cain can't trust his plan. Cain, still processing what he just witnessed, mutters something in a light voice that Aaron doesn't catch. Puzzled, Aaron asks, "What is he saying now?" Trying to understand Cain's reaction to this unexpected display of power, Cain announced that they would commit fully to their plan and promised to contact Moria to secure additional gold. This left Cheryl and Aaron confused and anxious. A few days later, guards allowed a carriage into Brand City. The head of Moria, Grim Moria, emerged from the carriage and surveyed his surroundings, contemplating whether this would soon be his new territory. Grim Moria, known as Blood Coin and a fallen aristocrat, is the owner of the Moria Trade Group, which amassed wealth through generations of land projects. About 30 years ago, Aaron's late father, the Emperor, enacted the Land Trade Prohibition Act, leading to Duke Moria's purging for his fierce opposition. To recover his family's fortunes, Moria engaged in an illegal private loan business in Javan, targeting small business owners and earning a reputation for brutality. Despite his controversial methods, he became the owner of the Moria Trade Group, one of the top 3 trade groups on the continent. Upon arriving in Brand City, Grim Moria surveyed the area and wondered if it would soon become his territory. Grim Moria's subordinate reminded him that, due to the Land Trade Prohibition Act, purchasing Bran territory directly with money was not possible. However, if Duke Aaron failed to repay his debts, Moria could take over his territory instead. The subordinate saw this as a perfect opportunity for revenge against the late emperor, who had purged Duke Moria. Grim Moria agreed, eager to show Duke Aaron the power and fear of blood coin money. Later, when they met Aaron, Grim Moria and his subordinate both kneeled and offered their respects, with Grim Moria formally addressing Aaron as the Duke. Aaron greeted Grim Moria with a smile, asking if his journey to the north had been comfortable. Grim Moria replied if there are clients who borrow his money. He did even go to the Black Continent, not to mention the north. Of course, the same goes for when he is collecting interest and the principal borrowed. As they exchanged a glance, Aaron thought about another person who wished for his failure, while Grim Moria wondered if Aaron would still be smiling after experiencing a loss in the territory war. During their meeting, Cain asked Moria if he understood why he had been summoned. Moria confirmed that he was aware and stated that the Moria Trade Group would issue a 3 million gold deed on behalf of Aaron for the current bet, presenting the deed from the Javan betting castle. Aaron accepted the letter and trusted Moria's expertise, assuming he had handled all the necessary details. Moria, confused, asked why he had been summoned. Aaron requested an additional 2 million gold loan. Moria expressed concern about lending the money if it involved hiring mercenaries, as this might affect his relationships with other clients. Aaron clarified that he would not use mercenaries but only the soldiers of Bran territory for the war. When Moria asked what the money would be used for, Aaron explained it was for investment purposes, planning to invest in the territory's development in advance, anticipating that winning the territorial battle would eventually bring in more money. Moria thought to himself that even if Aaron lost the territory battle, Moria would still benefit by acquiring the territory, and thus he would not lose out. He was puzzled by Aaron's apparent confidence in victory. Grim Moria agreed to lend the money if Aaron provided a contract for investing in the territory. Aaron, smiling, agreed to draw up the contract. However, Cain, visibly angry, objected, warning that if Aaron lost the war, he would be burdened with debt. As the treasurer and chief butler, Cain could not approve such a contract. Aaron interrupted and stated that they just need to win. Grim Moria, thinking this was a chance to gain lordship and financially entrap Aaron, was frustrated by the situation. He wondered if there was anything he could do to make it work. Then he had an idea and offered an interest-free loan. Both Cain and Aaron were surprised by this proposal. Grim Moria clarified that he would lend the money without charging interest, alleviating some of the financial burden. He also revealed that he had bet on Aaron's victory, hinting at his support. As they were leaving, Grim Moria's subordinate questioned whether he had genuinely placed a bet on Duke Aaron's victory. Grim Moria told his subordinate that he never intended to bet on their victory. It was just a lie to get them to borrow his money. His subordinate smiled, admiring Grim Moria's quick thinking and resourcefulness, and commented on his adeptness as the owner of the Moria Trade Group. Grim Moria then speculated that Aaron and Cain likely believed he was supporting their side. Both of them laughed at this. Observing them from the window, Aaron asked the old man about the conversation, and Cain inquired for clarification. Aaron complimented Cain on his perfect acting, noting the impressive combination of an indefinite loan with 0 interest. Cain, slightly blushing, attributed the skill to his years of experience rather than acting. 20 days before the territory war, Rommel organized the elves into formation and commanded them to fire their arrows. However, the arrows fell short of their target. Observing this, Aaron criticized their weak performance, pointing out that they would be easily overwhelmed by a cavalry charge before even firing effectively. He then turned to Cain and asked if he had failed to pay for their food. Cain, frustrated, insisted that he had provided enough food for the elves. Their discussion was interrupted by Canis, who pointed out that the short bows the elves were using had a maximum range of less than 100 meters, whereas the range needed on the plains would exceed 200 meters. Aaron noted that an ambush would be challenging on the open plain and expressed concern about taking the lead from a distance, especially with the whole empire watching. He was uneasy about getting directly involved. Canis suggested that while he hoped Aaron wouldn't need to intervene, they might need to consider deploying Cheryl depending on the situation. He emphasized that battles involve unpredictable variables and managing these in advance would help them achieve a balanced 1,000 to 1,000 battle as planned. Aaron asked Canis how they could control the variables in the situation. Canis responded that they couldn't leave the issue unresolved, since they were uncertain whether the arrows would reach their targets. To address this, he planned to improve the bows to manage the distance variable. However, he added that they needed materials and skilled weapons craftsmen who could produce the enhanced bows quickly. Aaron expressed concern about the time constraint, asking if it was possible to assemble the necessary craftsmen and materials within less than 3 weeks. Canis assured him that he could get everything needed within 3 days. When Aaron questioned whether 3 days would be sufficient, Canis confirmed it would be, but added that the craftsmen would not be human. This puzzled Aaron, while Canis was considering a particular dwarf who would be ideal for the task. That night Canis, in his dragon form, flew to the northernmost region of the Brahn territory, where his nest was situated. Upon his arrival, he was greeted by a group of dwarves. One of the dwarves approached Canis, bowed, and presented him with an ornament. The dwarf said, "Welcome back, master. Here is the ornament that he ordered." Canis inspects an ornament and criticizes its poor condition, questioning if the dwarf who made it ran out of time. The dwarf, clearly distressed, pleads for his life, promising to redo the work. Canis, dismissive, discards the ornament, stating it's unworthy of him. He then addresses another dwarf, Keshi, who had been hiding, instructing him to come out. Once Keshi appears, Canis commands him to climb on, indicating that they have someplace to go. Keshi, initially shocked, follows Canis's orders and climbs onto his back. Within 10 minutes, they reach the Brahn territory Minotaur labyrinth. In his dragon form, Canis unleashes a fiery attack, killing hundreds of Minotaurs instantly. After the slaughter, Canis informs Keshi that the materials they need are ready. 3 days later, Canis and Keshi arrive at Brahn Castle with a carriage full of materials. When Aaron sees the horns and the carriage, he inquires about their purpose. Canis explains that the horns are from water buffalo and are intended to improve the bows. He notes that while using these horns makes the bows vulnerable to moisture, it significantly enhances their elasticity and range. Aaron questions whether water buffalo are present in their territory. Canis explains to Aaron that he acquired the horns cheaply from an international trader who was about to discard them due to a lack of buyers. Aaron remarks on the large size of the buffalo horns, which seem unusually big. Noticing Keshi seated on the carriage, Aaron inquires if Keshi is the artisan Canis mentioned. Canis directs Keshi to dismount and greet Aaron. Keshi jumps down and approaches Aaron, addressing him with a surprising level of arrogance by saying, "So you're the Lord?" Is he ready to serve Keshi, the dwarf? This unexpected and presumptuous greeting shocks both Rommel and Canis. Keshi further insults Aaron by questioning his audacity to speak informally to the esteemed Lord Canis. Keshi's insolent remarks are abruptly interrupted when Canis grabs her and hurriedly retreats. Shortly afterward, Canis returns to Aaron with Keshi in tow and apologizes, explaining that Keshi's lack of proper manners is due to her being a dwarf and requests Aaron's forgiveness. Aaron responds by saying that he is indifferent to Keshi's manners, as long as she possesses the necessary skills. To everyone's surprise, Aaron kneels before Keshi and introduces himself as Aaron, the Lord of Brahn, pledging to rely on her expertise. Keshi acknowledges Aaron's gesture with a casual "yeah," showing her acceptance of the situation. With 2 weeks remaining until the territorial war, Keshi, now granted full authority over weapons manufacturing by Erin, began working on improving bows. Her perfectionist approach and the citizens' frustration with her young, rude demeanor led to occasional conflicts. However, Erin's mediation helped ensure that the weapon upgrades continued relatively smoothly. 3 days before the war, as Canis inspected the battlefield, he reflected on the strategic challenges. He noted that the Emperor was closely observing the war and recognized that both the Lord and his sister were unable to reveal their full power. He realized that merely relying on improved bows wouldn't suffice to efficiently overcome forces twice their size. Observing the muddy ground, Canis contemplated a new strategy and decided to return to Keshi with his ideas. Keshi, half asleep, pleads with Canis to spare her and tries to return to sleep. Canis throws water on her to rouse her, and she again begs for mercy, not fully grasping the situation. Canis, irritated, clarifies that he isn't threatening her life, but orders her to get ready and join him as they head to the battlefield. 3 days later, on the day of the territorial war, soldiers and knights from Count's forces gather at the battlefield, awaiting the arrival of Duke Erin's troops. In one of the tents, Count Oman comments on the situation, noting that despite a 10% reduction in their forces, he still expects them to win. Count Gray inquires about the amount Count Oman has bet, to which Oman responds that he has wagered around 500,000 gold. Oman had intended to gather more funds but found borrowing from Moria awkward. Count Gray agrees, noting that Moria's money feels uncomfortable. Gray then speculates that after today's battle, merchants like Moria will be eager to align with them, as they are set to gain control of the gold mine. Count Oman agrees, acknowledging Gray's point. Gray then expresses frustration that the Duke has not yet appeared, implying that the Duke should be intelligent enough to be present. As they observe Erin's forces, Count Oman notices something unusual and asks what's that. Both counts are shocked to see a siege tower, which surprises them. Both counts, upon seeing the siege tower, begin to laugh, mocking the decision to bring such an apparatus to a plains battle. They dismiss it as a sign of desperation and an indication of bringing inappropriate equipment for the situation. At this moment, a mage sent by the Emperor arrives on horseback and positions himself between the two sides. He announces that, under the order of the Lord Emperor, they will now conduct the final formalities. He requests representatives from both sides to gather for this purpose. Both sides approach the mage, with Count Oman and Count Gray moving from one side and Duke Erin and his entourage from the other. Upon arrival, they dismount from their horses. Count Oman sarcastically remarks to Duke Erin, commenting on his appearance and praising his effort for bringing what he calls trash to the battlefield. Duke Erin responds sharply, thanking Oman for his concern but retorting that he does not look worse than Ammon's own fat gluttonous face. Count Ammon's anger is provoked by Duke Erin's retort. The mage steps in to clarify the battle terms once more. He states that if Duke Erin wins, he will gain control of 2 villages from the Count Union and the gold mine will be recognized as his. Conversely, if the Union wins, Duke Erin will lose jurisdiction over the 2 territories, and the Counts will retain the gold mine. The mage asks if there are any concerns regarding these terms. When no objections are raised, he instructs the representatives to return to their respective sides and prepare for the battle's commencement. As the representatives mounted their horses and prepared to return to their sides, Duke Erin suddenly turned down and told them to watch your head, while pointing upwards. The counts, puzzled, covered their heads, unsure of Erin's intent. The mage then cast a spell, signaling the start of the territorial war between Duke Erin's 1,000 troops and the Count Union's 2,000 forces. Upon returning to his side, Duke Erin informed Rommel that the commissioner was actually a spy for the Emperor. He also mentioned that neither he nor Cheryl would be participating in the fight and instructed Rommel to follow the plan. Rommel acknowledged his instructions. Rommel ordered the archers to raise your bows, and the elves complied by drawing their bows and shooting arrows. However, the arrows fell short, barely reaching the center of the battlefield. Count Oman, observing this, laughed and mocked Duke Aaron, commenting on the ineffectiveness of the arrows and expressing frustration with what he perceived as Aaron's antics. Oman then offered the cavalry captain 5,000 gold to end the battle before his tea cooled, with an additional 5,000 gold as a bonus if the task was completed promptly. The cavalry captain agreed, assuring Oman that they would finish the battle before his tea was cold. He then instructed his knights to drop their shields and complete the task as quickly as possible. Upon hearing the captain's orders, all the cavalry knights discarded their shields. The cavalry captain rallied his troops, urging them to pummel those bastards and leading them in a charge. As the enemy cavalry advanced towards them, Rommel prepared to respond. He instructed the archers to ready angled fire. The elves then discarded their old bows, equipped their newly made bows, and prepared their arrows. Once the enemy was within range, Rommel commanded the elves to fire. The new bows significantly extended the range of the arrows, allowing them to hit the advancing cavalry. Realizing they were in a trap, the cavalry captain ordered his troops to run into the arrow fire. He then instructed them to run horizontally and spread out to the sides to minimize casualties. In response, Rommel ordered the siege tower to be readied. The soldiers on the siege tower prepared for action. When the enemy was within range, Rommel gave the command to fire. A net with large, heavy spears was launched from the siege tower, effectively trapping and isolating the cavalry within it. Inside the net, the trapped enemy cavalry struggled to free themselves, with some trying to cut through the metal with their swords. They exchanged frustrated comments about the metal being too tough. The captain urged his men to find a way out and remain calm. At that moment, an arrow struck the captain's helmet, causing him concern as he noticed elves already their arrows to fire at them. Rommel remarked he guessed they weren't watching their head, before the elves fired their arrows into the net, causing significant casualties. Seeing the dire situation, Count Grey became agitated and confronted Count Oman, accusing him of poor judgment for telling the cavalry to drop their shields. Count Oman defensively responded, "Hey, how was he supposed to know this was going to happen?" Count Grey ordered infantry to rescue the trapped cavalry. Rommel responded by directing his forces to attack the enemy infantry, aiming to prevent them from aiding the cavalry. Rommel and his cavalry advanced to engage the infantry. In reaction, Count Grey instructed his archers to target Rommel and his cavalry. As the enemy archers fired arrows, Bianca, accompanied by his holy knight, began to pray to goddess Vivian for protection. Holy light enveloped them, creating a shield that deflected the arrows. The sudden appearance of the protective shield shocked both counts, who exclaimed in surprise. Meanwhile, Aaron and Canis observed the scene with smiles, seemingly pleased with the turn of events. The Count Alliance's forces include 470 archers, 1,000 infantry, and 500 cavalry trapped in the net. In contrast, Aaron's forces consist of 200 cavalry, 200 archers, and 600 infantry. Count Grey commanded his infantry to attack the enemy's cavalry on the right side. Rommel, surprised by this maneuver, quickly adjusted his strategy. He ordered half of his cavalry to follow him, while the rest dealt with the enemy cavalry. As the battle commenced, Rommel's cavalry engaged the 1,000 Count infantry. Rommel's unit inflicted significant damage, reducing the morale of the Count's infantry soldiers. The soldiers were visibly shaken as Rommel led his cavalry, creating a path through the chaos. An enemy cavalry knight managed to escape from the net and briefly felt relieved, but he was swiftly killed by Lady Bianca. As Rommel's forces continued to engage the infantry, Bianca's unit focused on the enemy cavalry. Both counts, seeing the situation deteriorate, urgently turned to the mercenary mages and demanded that they intervene. The mages began casting a spell and launched a magic projectile. Aaron and Canis were taken aback by the sight. The magic projectile was fired at Rommel's cavalry unit and struck them unexpectedly, causing surprise and likely disrupting their operations. Aaron, concerned by the magic attack, called out to Rommel. However, As the dust cleared, it was revealed that Rommel and his unit had survived thanks to the holy shield provided by Bianca. Eren breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Rommel was unharmed, though the shield soon broke down. Realizing the danger, Rommel thought to himself that the situation was perilous. He instructed his cavalry to ignore the enemy infantry and prepare to escape. However, as they tried to turn around, they found themselves completely surrounded by the enemy infantry. The infantry soldiers declared, "They are not going anywhere. This place will be all of their graves," effectively trapping Rommel and his unit. Both counts laughed as Rommel's unit became surrounded. Observing the situation, Eren noted that while Rommel was a master-level swordsman, his position was becoming increasingly perilous. He ordered his infantry to charge and save the Night Order captain and the cavalry. As the infantry charged to aid Rommel, Eren turned to Canis and said he planned to personally rescue Rommel. He asked Canis to handle the mages in his absence. Canis warned that the Emperor's spy was present, but Eren insisted that Rommel's safety was the priority. He assured Canis that he would address the spy himself and instructed Canis not to worry excessively. As Eren moved away, he called out for his sister. Meanwhile, Canis directed the archers to deploy the catapult. They removed it from the siege towers, positioned it, and loaded rocks onto it. Canis then ordered them to fire. The catapult launched the rocks, which struck and killed many enemy cavalrymen trapped in the net, reducing their number from 500 to 253. The attack further decreased the count to 197 cavalrymen. Seeing the impact, Count Grey instructed the mercenary mages to break the rocks. The mages responded by casting magic projectiles at the rock, shattering it into pieces. Seeing the effectiveness of the catapult attack, Count Grey laughed and mocked the effort as insignificant compared to magic. He then instructed the mages to target the catapult itself rather than the projectiles it was launching. One of the mages acknowledged that hitting the catapult was possible but would take some time. Count Grey agreed, deciding to prepare for a large-scale attack. Canis, observing the scene, reflected on the situation. He noted that the enemy had twice the number of troops and mages, and he was surprised by the complexity of the situation compared to his initial expectations. He wondered about the whereabouts and actions of the Lord, concerned about the evolving battle dynamics. Canis saw Eren and greeted him, noting the substantial mana energy around him and reflecting on how unusual it was for a human to possess such power. He speculated whether it's Cheryl's illusionary magic was at play, as he had not immediately recognized human illusion magic while he was not in his true form. Canis then observed Eren emerging from the forest, dressed differently and wielding a dagger, and thought to himself that Eren seemed to be continually revealing new tricks. As Eren moved closer to the soldiers, he considered the need for caution despite the spy being at a distance. He began searching for an item and soon found a helmet. Putting it on, he thought to himself, "Here he comes, hang in there a little longer," as he prepared to assist Rommel in the battle. Canis commanded his soldiers to prepare the catapults, and they began loading them with rocks. While they were doing this, enemy mages launched a magic attack, destroying one of the catapults. In response, Canis ordered the soldiers to fire the remaining catapults at maximum range, aiming for the mages. The soldiers obeyed and launched the rocks. As the rocks flew through the air, Canis remarked, "Now this is what you call watch your head." Noticing that the rocks were about to fall short of their target, Canis cast a spell called Feather on the rocks, accelerating their speed and guiding them directly toward the enemy mages. A spy mage from the Emperor, witnessing Canis's spell, was surprised and thought, "Flight magic." When the rocks approached, two counts, shocked by the unexpected range, quickly ordered the mages to block the incoming projectiles. The mages responded by launching magic attacks to break the rocks. However, Canis cast protection magic on the rocks, shielding them from the mages' spells. As the magical attacks hit the rocks, smoke formed, but the rocks emerged unscathed and continued their descent. The mages attempted to dodge, but some were struck by the rocks. Witnessing the aftermath, Count Omen, confused, asked, "What's happening?" An injured mage on the ground pointed towards the sky in response. Both counts quickly turned to the sky, and Count Grey exclaimed, "They're coming again." To think that Eren also had a mage. Just then, another attack struck the area where the mages were stationed. Count Grey, flustered by the situation, realized that Duke Eren had been hiding his last trump card and thought to himself, "It's come to this, an all-out war." Fueled by anger, he turned to the archers and commanded, "Stop getting hit and charge to the battlefront. Engage in hand-to-hand combat." The archers, hearing the order, rushed to the front lines. Then Count Grey turned to the mages and ordered, "Destroy the catapults. Keep the main camp safe." The leader of the mages, under pressure, expressed that they couldn't proceed without first destroying the catapults. Count Grey, frustrated, urged them to act immediately. The mage leader ordered the mages to target the boulders and defend the camp. The mages responded by using a water ball spell to block the rocks and telekinesis to throw them aside. Observing this, Canis thought the mages were using trivial tactics and smirked, suggesting a more formidable challenge. He then instructed the elves to prepare their fire arrows and shoot them as far as possible. The elves readied their bows and fire arrows, preparing to launch them. Canis ordered the elves to shoot their fire arrows, and they launched them into the air. As the arrows descended, Canis used flight magic to guide them towards the enemy camp. The mages, seeing the incoming arrows, quickly deployed a water ball spell for defense. However, the arrows maintained their speed and trajectory, soaring above the water ball, which puzzled both counts and the mage leader. In a surprising move, Canis then cast gravity reversal, causing the arrows to drop directly onto the mages. This unexpected shift led to the mages' deaths and resulted in the complete destruction of the Count's mage forces. Eren, disguised as an enemy soldier, observed the battlefield and thought about how he had instructed to prevent magic use, yet the enemy mages were wiped out. He noted the impressive range of the reformed arrows and considered joining the fight himself. Meanwhile, Rommel's unit was encircled by enemies. Seeing a dust cloud signaling incoming reinforcements, Rommel grew anxious. During this moment, he narrowly avoided a spear attack by ducking. Determined to hold on until reinforcements arrived, Rommel fought fiercely against the advancing enemies and urged his unit to persevere, shouting, "Our allies are on their way. Let's endure till the end." Hearing the news boosted the morale of his unit, leading them to prepare for battle against the enemy. Meanwhile, Bianca saw that the cavalry captain was in danger. She instructed the cavalry squad to deal with the enemy cavalry and directed the members of the Crusader Order to follow her. She then moved towards Rommel to provide him with assistance. Overall, the battlefield situation was as follows. The Count's Alliance mage unit had been completely destroyed. They had 470 archers, 750 infantry, and their cavalry was trapped. Duke Eren's forces consisted of 20 Crusader Order members heading to help Rommel, 80 cavalrymen managing the trapped enemy cavalry, 600 infantry attacking the enemy infantry, and 200 archers stationed at the main camp. As Bianca's Crusader Order unit arrived behind the enemy infantry, a soldier from the enemy side shouted a warning about the approaching forces. Before the enemy could react, Bianca's unit launched a surprise attack. Bianca instructed her knights to destroy them and save the knights' captain. Her forces began pushing through the enemy infantry. In response, an infantry captain from the Count's Alliance ordered his soldiers to block the rear and prevent Bianca's unit from advancing further, instructing them to block the back. The enemy soldiers quickly turned around and began attacking Bianca, who struggled to block their blows with her shield. The force of the attacks pushed her backward. Realizing their response was swift, Bianca prayed to Goddess Vivian, asking for divine assistance. A golden light enveloped her, blinding the enemy soldiers. Seizing their opportunity, Bianca ordered her knights to charge. Observing this, Eren thought to himself that Bianca's actions were impressive and would buy them some time. Aaron's thoughts were interrupted by an infantry captain who commanded his troops, "Open your eyes, and I will kill those who retreat." Recognizing the captain, Aaron took note of him. Meanwhile, the captain continued to issue orders, urging his troops not to retreat and to push forward, referring to the enemies as poisoned rats. At that moment, the captain was struck and fatally injured by a dagger from behind. The captain, trembling in pain, turns around to see his attacker and finds Aaron standing there. Aaron declares, "He is the rat that came here to kill him." With that, the captain collapses and dies. Aaron then surveys the area and spots two more captains. Determined to save Rommel, he decides to eliminate the enemy's key leaders. Moving swiftly and unseen, Aaron kills the Count's alliance infantry commanders and another captain. Both fall to the ground simultaneously, causing the soldiers to stare in shock. At that moment, Aaron shouts, "The commander has fallen, all troops, retreat." The enemy soldiers become anxious and confused, questioning how the situation unfolded with their commander's fall. The commander of the archers realizes the commander has been defeated and issues an urgent command. He instructs the remaining troops to stay focused and not be misled by what he perceives as enemy sabotage. Aaron, noticing the confusion and realizing he missed one of the commanders, becomes flustered. The archer commander orders no retreat and commands a charge against the enemy forces that they have surrounded. Following the archer commander's orders, the enemy soldiers charge forward and successfully defeat all of Rommel's knights. Rommel, witnessing the outcome of the battle, reacts with intense anger. Roaring in frustration, Aaron, sensing the escalating situation and feeling nervous, starts sweating. He resolves to take immediate action, thinking he needs to act quickly. Aaron rushes towards the commander, preparing to attack him from behind. He is determined to eliminate the last remaining commander and mentally prepares for the kill. As Aaron is about to strike, his attack is unexpectedly blocked by the commander's soldiers. The commander reveals that the situation was a trap set specifically for Aaron, indicating he had planned this contingency in advance. Contrary to what the commander anticipated, Aaron begins to laugh. This reaction surprises the commander, hinting at a twist or a deeper strategy on Aaron's part. Aaron, questioning the need to plan ahead, swiftly retracts his dagger, using it to eliminate the soldiers blocking his path to the commander. As the commander realizes he is about to be defeated, he issues a desperate final command to his troops to charge and kill his allies. Despite the commander's order, Aaron beheads him, ensuring his death. After dispatching the commander, Aaron calls out Rommel's name with evident worry, suggesting he is concerned about Rommel's safety or involvement in the unfolding events. Rommel, exhausted, is under threat from enemy soldiers poised to kill him with spear attacks. Just in time, Bianca's unit arrives and intervenes, saving Rommel from imminent death. Aaron's infantry arrives on the scene. Their commander seizes the opportunity created by the enemy's loss of their commander, instructing his troops to kill all remaining enemy soldiers. The enemy soldiers, now leaderless and in disarray, are easily defeated by Aaron's infantry. The battle ends with Duke Aaron's camp achieving a decisive victory. The numbers are 1,000 soldiers from Aaron's camp versus 2,000 from the Count's alliance, marking a complete victory for Duke Aaron. Aaron advances towards the main camp of the Counts, which is now surrounded by his forces. He observes the anxious expressions on the faces of both Counts. Aaron comments on the nervousness of the Counts, taunting them by recalling his earlier warning about being cautious. Count Ormond, bewildered by Aaron's ability to maneuver through the chaos of arrows and boulders, tries to draw his sword. He demands to know what kind of sorcery Aaron is using. Before Count Ormond can act further, Aaron's knights quickly position their swords at Ammon's neck, instilling fear and causing him to tremble. Aaron, drawing his sword, confronts Count Ormond, indignantly rejecting the suggestion that his success is due to sorcery. He accuses Ormond, a mere count's vassal, of insulting him and declares his intention to kill Ormond to restore the proper hierarchical order of the territory. As Eren attempts to strike Count Almon, a mage sent by the Emperor intervenes, grabbing Eren's hand and urging him to reconsider. The mage questions the value of killing a vassal, suggesting it may not be beneficial. Eren, furious, demands the mage release him, emphasizing that being insulted, as a member of the royal family, is equivalent to insulting the emperor himself. In response to the threat, Count Almon kneels before Eren and pleads for his life, admitting his wrongdoing and begging for mercy. Eren turns to Count Grey and asks for his response. Count Grey, recognizing his defeat, also kneels and submits. Eren declares that, as per Grey's submission, both of their cities will now become part of his duchy, the Eren Duchy. Both counts accept Eren's terms, saying, "Do as you wish." Eren announces that the takeover process will begin that night. He warns the counts that if they misuse their citizens for personal gain, he will revoke their titles. Both counts agree to Eren's conditions, acknowledging him as the Duke. The following afternoon, the scene shifts to a meeting room. Kain presents the betting certificates from Jarvan Betting Castle, revealing a certificate for 3 million gold and an additional one for a 2 million gold loan. He notes that with a dividend rate of about 10 times, they have earned at least 50 million gold from the war. Kain is ecstatic, laughing and running around with excitement. Kain exclaims that this newfound wealth will allow them to repay their debts and enhance the prosperity of their castle. Eren interrupts Kain, instructing him that the money should be used for investment purposes rather than personal gains. Kain is taken aback and angry, questioning Eren's decision. He struggles to believe that Eren is suggesting using the money for investment rather than immediate financial relief and improvement. Eren explains that while the funds from the war are significant, the primary objective was to gain manpower and expand their territory. With the acquisition of 2 cities from each of the defeated territories and an additional city from clearing the orcs and the Black Forest, their territory, Brahn, has effectively doubled in size. Eren emphasizes the importance of using the funds to stabilize and secure the newly acquired territories first. He plans to use the money for this purpose before gradually pursuing further expansion. Eren declares his intention to become known as the loser of the North, a statement that shocks everyone present at the meeting. Cheryl reacts with concern, questioning Eren's declaration. She fears that branding themselves as the loser of the North would expose their power and potentially make them a target. Eren elaborates on his reasoning behind his plan. He explains that, following the war, both the Emperor and the feudal lords loyal to him will closely monitor their actions. Eren argues that if they attempt to conceal their power, the Emperor might destroy them before they can fully strengthen themselves. Eren proposes a strategy of outwardly appearing loyal to the Emperor and his followers, giving them what they want as a form of tactical submission. This approach, he believes, will buy them time to build strength. However, Eren vows that once they are ready, they will decisively outmaneuver their adversaries, taking everything and leaving only the bare essentials. At this critical moment, Max bursts into the room, announcing the arrival of the owner of the Moria Trade Group. Eren concludes the meeting, instructing everyone except Kain to continue with their duties. Grim Moria enters the meeting room and presents a certificate, demanding repayment of 5 million gold, as stipulated by the terms of their contract due to Eren's victory in the war. Eren turns to Kain and asks if they have the funds available for repayment. Kain reveals that they are currently so financially strained that they do not even have enough money for basic necessities, let alone the 5 million gold required. Grim Moria insists on the repayment, emphasizing the contractual obligation of the Eren Duchy to pay the specified amount. Kain approaches Grim Moria and examines the contract. He points out a clause in the contract that specifies the repayment will be interest-free indefinitely. Grim Moria is taken aback and confused by this clause. He questions the validity of the claim. Kain aggressively accuses Grim Moria of threatening Eren, citing the contract's terms. He emphasizes that the contract specifies no interest and questions Grim Moria's attempt to demand repayment. Cain turns to Aaron and asks how he dealt with such matters when he was in the capital, suggesting that Aaron should address the situation similarly. Aaron brandishes his sword, pointing it at Grim Moria's neck. He suggests that, under normal circumstances, Grim Moria would face death for his sin of misspeaking. However, he offers an alternative way for Grim Moria to save himself. Grim Moria, confused and apprehensive, asks about this alternative way. Aaron drives his sword into the table in front of Grim Moria, demanding that Grim Moria swear an oath. He refers to Grim Moria as Blood Coin and instructs him to swear upon the sword. Grim Moria asks for clarification, indicating his concern and confusion over the oath he is being asked to take. Aaron demands that Grim Moria swear to become one of his retainers and dedicate his life to the Brahn territory, effectively binding him to Aaron's service and loyalty. A boat carrying a letter arrives at the location of Crown Prince Philip on the Western continent. Philip empties the letter and reads it, discovering that Aaron has won the territory war. As Philip reads the letter, 3 soldiers attempt to attack him. Philip swiftly turns and dispatches them with a single thrust of his sword. After dealing with the attackers, Philip places the flag of the Empire. He reflects on the situation, thinking about returning to the Empire and anticipating that future events will become increasingly interesting. Emperor Zerone confronts Crown Prince Philip in the meeting room, questioning his decision to return from his task of conquering the Western continent upon learning of Aaron's victory. The Emperor is perplexed by Philip's apparent concern over Aaron, a distant royal family member. During the conversation, Emperor Zerone is playing a game of chess and removes one of Philip's pieces, tossing it to him. He emphasizes his point by noting Philip's strong reaction to Aaron's success. Philip, while picking up and breaking the chess piece with his magic power, downplays the significance of Aaron's victory. He claims to be merely slightly interested, though his internal thoughts reveal a deeper personal interest, particularly in relation to the throne he is destined to ascend. Philip reflects privately on his ambition and how Aaron's success might impact his own future and prospects for the throne. Aaron is rapidly reviewing and authorizing a large volume of documents, demonstrating his efficiency and thoroughness in handling administrative duties. Canis, observing Aaron, notes how skilled and efficient he has become, likening his expertise to that of a seasoned butler who has managed documents for a long time. While working, Aaron reflects on his current speed compared to his past life as a butler. He considers that he used to handle documents even faster back then and contemplates how much more he could have managed previously. Rommel bursts into the room, shouting "My lord," and disturbing Aaron's concentration. Aaron, taken aback by Rommel's forceful entry, angrily reminds him to knock before entering. Rommel informs Aaron about protests occurring in the territories of Count Grey and Count Oman. Aaron speculates that the protests are not genuinely initiated by the citizens, but are likely orchestrated by the counts themselves. He smiles, suggesting that he will take action to meet their expectations. A knight storms into Count Amon's room, holding an important document. Count Oman, currently in the middle of a meal, questions the urgency of the knight's intrusion. The knight reveals that the document is a declaration of war, indicating a significant and immediate escalation in the conflict. Count Oman, astonished by the knight's announcement of a declaration of war, reacts angrily and incredulously, questioning the validity of the declaration. In the meeting room, Cain is surprised and asks Aaron for the reason behind the declaration of war. Aaron explains that the declaration is based on charges of treason. He accuses Count Oman of orchestrating a protest by disguising his soldiers as civilians and breaking his oath by not surrendering his territory after losing the battle. Rommel expresses concern that the declaration of war might be premature and reckless, given that the Count's regular forces are significantly larger than Aaron's. Aaron admits that the declaration was indeed reckless, showing an awareness of the risks involved in his decision. Cheryl asks Aaron why he declared war despite the risks. Eren explains that the declaration aligns with what the Emperor would expect and is grounded in truth. This revelation shocks everyone present. Cheryl is stunned and questions if Eren has already received the Emperor's approval for the territory transfer. Eren confirms that he did receive the Emperor's approval, noting that the Emperor believed he was simply reveling in his victory. Canis praises Eren's forward-thinking strategy and offers to provide a battle strategy. Eren declines Canis's offer, suggesting that he has other plans. Canis is surprised and asks Eren why he declined his offer to provide a battle strategy if it's not needed. Eren explains that Canis, as the strategist, is busy with managing the newly acquired territories. He indicates that since the upcoming battle will occur at night and the Emperor will not be monitoring it, he will handle the battle personally. He suggests that Canis should consider this as an opportunity for a break. Eren and his forces approach Count Ammon's castle as night falls. They wait until it is dark before proceeding. As night arrives, Eren and his knights, organized in formation, move toward Count Ammon's castle, positioning themselves in preparation for the assault. From the castle walls, Count Ammon observes Eren's forces. He notes the lack of siege weapons and concludes that Eren's troops, being leftovers, will not be able to breach the castle walls. Ammon believes that if he can withstand the siege, victory will eventually be his. Ammon publicly questions Eren's motives, accusing him of declaring war out of greed for territorial expansion. He challenges Eren's actions as unjust. Eren responds by accusing Count Ammon of treason, citing evidence of Ammon's involvement in protests and betrayal. Despite this, Eren offers Ammon a chance to avoid further bloodshed. He proposes that if Ammon surrenders and opens the gates, he will spare his life. Count Ammon becomes anxious upon hearing Eren's offer and realizes that Eren must have evidence of his treason. Despite his growing concern, Ammon remains defiant, believing he can win the battle eventually. He challenges Eren, daring him to break into the castle if he's confident. Eren responds with anger, condemning Ammon for his arrogance and promising that the battle will be severe for his transgressions. He then calls for his sister, Cheryl. Cheryl, standing beside Eren, is asked to assist. She casts the spell Flame Shower to attack the castle. However, the castle's defenses are effective, as the attack is blocked by a magical shield surrounding the castle. Count Ammon mocks the Cheryl, confidently stating that the magic shields created by the Ivory Tower wizards are too strong to be penetrated by what he deems low-level magic. Cheryl, infuriated by Ammon's insult, retorts angrily, calling him a bald head in frustration. Cheryl, determined to prove Ammon wrong, casts another spell by swinging her wand through the air and striking the ground. Cheryl's spell conjures a powerful wave of water that crashes against the castle, but it is once again deflected by the castle's protective magic shield. Count Ammon, witnessing this, laughs and questions the nature of the magic involved, making a remark about the need to quench thirst before beginning. Cheryl responds to Count Ammon by summoning a multiple number of massive worms from the ground. These worms begin to assault the castle. The worms' attack causes significant damage to the castle, leading to the collapse of the castle walls. As the walls begin to fall, Count Ammon narrowly escapes by jumping away from the collapsing gate wall. Count Ammon, stunned by the destruction, expresses his disbelief and confusion about the situation. Eren seizes the opportunity presented by the fallen wall and commands his knights to advance and capture Count Ammon. The cavalry, having received the order, advances with the goal of capturing Count Ammon. From his position on the wall, Count Ammon commands the archers to shoot arrows to prevent the enemy from advancing. The archers' arrows strike the leading cavalry knights, causing them to fall. Observing the success of the archers' attack, Count Ammon laughs and instructs them to keep shooting. Rommel, noting the progress of their assault, urges his fellow knights to charge into the castle. During the chaos, one of Count Ammon's archers becomes anxious and ceases firing, trembling in fear. Count Ammon, infuriated by the archer's hesitation, approaches him and delivers a forceful kick to his stomach, sending him crashing to the ground. Count Oman, enraged, yells at the archer, demanding an explanation for why he ceased firing despite explicit instructions. The other archers are startled by the outburst. Count Oman warns them harshly, threatening to kill them himself if they display similar incompetence. Eren, observing Count Amon's behavior, decides to intervene, thinking of the future loyalty of the soldiers. As he moves to act, Cheryl halts him, leaving Eren puzzled. Cheryl informs Eren that their agreement covered only the flame shower, and that an extra 100,000 gold is required for the use of the mud worms. Eren protests, arguing that Cheryl's use of the mud worms was a personal decision made out of anger, and should not be subject to additional payment. While Eren is speaking with Cheryl, he detects an arrow aimed at him and catches it effortlessly. Observing the archers, Eren comments on their audacity or recklessness. Eren agrees to the additional payment for the mud worms, instructing Cheryl to record the amount in the ledger. After agreeing to the payment, Eren begins to sprint towards the wall. Count Oman commands the archers to shoot at Eren, believing that capturing him will ensure their victory. The archers are astonished as Eren deftly evades their arrows, using his speed to continue his approach towards the wall. Eren reflects internally, recognizing the need to swiftly capture Count Oman to reduce casualties on both sides and conclude the conflict. Eren used the wall to propel himself onto the top of the castle wall where Count Oman and the archers are positioned, surprising everyone. Eren attempts to strike Count Oman, but Oman manages to evade the attack. Noting Eren's furious expression, Count Oman becomes visibly nervous and instructs the archers to engage Eren. The archers charge at Eren to impede him, but Eren swiftly defeats them with ease. Observing the chaos, Count Oman flees the scene, eliminating his own archers who obstruct his escape. Eren, infuriated by Count Amon's disregard for his own men, reflects on Amon's inability to safeguard his troops and his callous attitude towards their lives. Count Oman forces his way toward the stairs, eliminating anyone who obstructs him, while reflecting on Eren's unexpected strength. Eren unexpectedly appears in front of Oman, blocking his access to the stairs. Eren offers Oman a chance to surrender, promising that his family and soldiers will be spared if he complies. Oman inquires about his own fate under Eren's terms. Eren coldly informs Oman that he will be killed regardless of his surrender. Oman, searching for an escape route, finds that his own soldiers are obstructing his way. Oman attempts to clear a path by attacking his own soldiers, but one soldier retaliates by using a spear to injure Amon's sword hand. This injury causes Oman to drop his sword and collapse in pain. Count Amon's soldiers urge him to surrender. Oman, frustrated and realizing escape is impossible, appeals to Eren for mercy, offering to become his vassal and pledge loyalty. Before Oman can finish his plea, Eren executes him, stating he has no use for a vassal who disregards his own people. Eren declares Amon's death and announces victory, signaling the end of the battle. Eren claims all of Amon's lands, except for a small fortress, as part of his domain, Brahn. Count Gayle, upon learning of Amon's death, decides to surrender and cede half of his estates to Eren to ensure his own safety. With the Duchy of Brahn restored, Eren begins strategizing to expand his territory and consolidate power, aiming to become the dominant ruler in the north and prepare for a significant future conflict with the Emperor. In the imperial capital Javan, Emperor Zerone, visibly agitated, questions whether Eren has secured another victory. Duke Gran confirms that the reports of Eren's victory are accurate. Emperor Zerone angrily recalls Duke Gran's previous assessment, where he had predicted that Eren lacked the forces necessary to endure multiple battles. Duke Gran explains that Eren's victory was aided by the intervention of a mysterious wizard, admitting he underestimated the wizard's power. However, he downplays the significance of Eren's win, suggesting that reclaiming a single duchy won't impact the overall strength of the empire. Duke Gran then shifts focus, expressing concern not about the extent of Aaron's influence but about his underlying intentions and future plans. Emperor Zerone inquires about the specific intentions Duke Gran is concerned about regarding Aaron. Duke Gran clarifies that while the restoration of the Brahn Duchy is expected, the real issue lies in whether Duke Aaron will remain loyal to the empire or choose to defy it. Emperor Zerone recalls that Duke Aaron vowed to stay secluded within the Brahn Duchy, and warns that if Aaron violates this oath, the entire empire will not tolerate his betrayal. Duke Gran raises the concern that if Aaron chooses to expand the Brahn Duchy, the empire may lack legitimate reasons or legal grounds to intervene. This realization alarms Emperor Zerone, as he reflects internally on the imperial order, which is founded on the principle of free war among vassals. He recalls that this law was established before he ascended to the throne to secure the nobles' support. Concerned about the situation, Emperor Zerone is called by Crown Prince Philip, who offers to investigate Duke Aaron's true intentions and assess the condition of the Brahn Duchy. After some consideration, Emperor Zerone agrees to Philip's request, suggesting that Philip use the opportunity to congratulate the duchy on its recent victory as a cover for his visit. Philip acknowledges the emperor's approval and promises to prepare for the trip. He privately reflects on his anticipation to see Aaron's development since their past sparring matches. In the Brahn Duchy, a public notice is displayed on the town's notice board. The notice announces a reduction in the tax rate to 30%, prompting excitement among the people as it signifies a significant decrease from the previous rate of 60%. A member of the crowd comments that the rumors about the duchy's financial success following their recent victory are indeed accurate. The people, pleased with the tax reduction and the duchy's success, begin to chant praises for Duke Aaron. Aaron observes the positive public reaction from a distance and reflects that implementing the tax reduction policy earlier would have been beneficial. Canis comments that Aaron's policy to improve public sentiment is proving effective. Aaron acknowledges the success of his policy in stabilizing the territory and expresses concern about the future of the treasury. He then inquires about the progress of the dungeon development project and the imminent opening of the second dungeon. Canis updates Aaron on the project, noting that Demon Eleanor is managing well and that the abandoned tower has been renovated. He also confirms that the Dark Knights are stationed on the top floor. Aaron agrees with Canis's assessment of Demon Eleanor's management, but is surprised to learn that Canis is aware of her true nature as a demon. He asks Canis how he discovered this information. Canis asserts that he is well informed about the project and mentions that he has not heard of a human managing Dark Knights, implying that Demon Eleanor's involvement is unusual. Cheryl approaches Aaron urgently and informs him that Philip is coming to visit as a delegate to offer congratulations. Aaron is taken aback by the mention of Philip and internally questions why Philip's visit is so alarming to Cheryl. He wonders if there is someone significant that he is unaware of. Cheryl clarifies that Philip is the person who physically assaulted Aaron in his youth. Aaron realizes that Cheryl is referring to Philip, the Crown Prince, and confirms this in his thoughts. Cheryl explains that Philip is indeed the Crown Prince, but because Aaron hates that, why she prefers to call him Philip. Aaron regrets his previous actions or decisions in light of the situation with Crown Prince Philip. Canis interrupts Aaron's thoughts to point out that Philip's visit is not just a congratulatory gesture but a way to monitor or control Aaron. Aaron reflects on the danger of Philip's scrutiny and fears the consequences of any mistakes. He anxiously considers how he might make Philip view his territory unfavorably to prompt a quick departure. Aaron observes the workers and comes up with a plan to influence Philip's perception. 2 days later, Philip arrives at the Brahn territory and comments on the height of the walls, noting their impressive stature for a frontier region. A knight accompanying Philip explains that the high walls are a defensive measure against frequent monster attacks, providing context for their height. Philip comments on Aaron's efforts to use his resources wisely, despite acquiring them through risky means. He notes that Aaron appears to have studied strategies for becoming an effective leader. As Philip approaches the Brahn territory gate, a knight announces his arrival with the imperial flag, formally introducing him as the crown prince. The gate opens, and Aaron and Cheryl kneel in greeting. Aaron expresses his gratitude for Philip's visit. When Philip does not immediately respond, Aaron looks up and sees Philip standing directly in front of him. Aaron is struck by Philip's presence and demeanor, noting his impressive and distinguished appearance, which makes Aaron hesitant to form any judgments. Philip observes that Aaron's eyes are still as intense and lively as they were in their youth, reflecting on how little Aaron has changed. Philip greets Aaron with a handshake, acknowledging their past relationship. Aaron accepts Philip's handshake while still kneeling and inquires about his well-being. Philip shifts his attention to Cheryl and compliments her appearance. Cheryl responds to Philip's compliment with irritation, expressing her displeasure at receiving such remarks. Aaron scolds Cheryl for her disrespectful behavior towards Philip. Philip reassures Aaron that there's no need for formality and that they should interact comfortably, as they did in the past. Aaron apologizes and pleads for Philip's understanding, admitting his mistake. Philip observes the workers busy on the castle wall. Rommel, showing harsh discipline, orders a worker to speed up and physically assaults him, leading to the worker falling from the wall. The other workers are frightened by Rommel's harsh behavior. Rommel continues to berate them, invoking the name of goddess Vivian to justify his strict discipline. Aaron, noticing the inappropriate behavior, calls Rommel over, reprimanding him for his actions on a day meant for celebration. Rommel is alarmed by Aaron's command and quickly approaches, kneeling and admitting his fault. Aaron angrily strikes Rommel, expressing his outrage at Rommel's behavior, which he believes has tarnished the occasion and displeased the crown prince. Aaron's anger escalates to suggesting Rommel deserves severe punishment for his actions. Aaron, enraged from his confrontation with Rommel, is surprised to see Cecilia intervening. Cecilia questions Aaron's actions, emphasizing that Rommel is an apostle performing a sacred duty and implying that Aaron's behavior is inappropriate. Aaron quickly shows respect by kneeling and apologizes on behalf of Rommel, acknowledging Cecilia's authority. Philip observes Cecilia's attire from the Church of Vivian and questions internally whether Aaron has become entangled with a cult. Knight Arthur informs Philip about Cecilia's affiliation with the Vivian Order. Philip acknowledges knowing Cecilia's identity but inquires about the reason for the stigma associated with her. Arthur explains that during the religious conflict with Paris, the deaths of Empire citizens were blamed on factors other than religion or opposition, leading to the perception of heresy. Philip reflects on how the actions of one religion led to negative repercussions for the empire and concludes that their downfall was a result of their own mistakes. Aaron apologizes to Philip, explaining that the disturbance caused by the workers is not typical behavior and attributing it to his own oversight. Philip reassures Aaron that such incidents are understandable and suggests moving inside the castle to discuss recent developments. Aaron, feeling anxious, explains that he must perform his duty to escort Philip, but also needs to attend to a prayer session. Philip inquires further, curious about the nature of the prayer. Aaron explains that as part of his responsibilities, he must pray for the territory and emphasizes the importance of managing his time strictly due to his current lack of power. He then assigns Cheryl to escort Philip. Aaron commands Cheryl to promptly take Philip inside the castle, indicating a sense of urgency. Aaron tells Philip to enter the castle and promises to return shortly before hurrying off. Philip, puzzled by Aaron's sudden departure, questions what is happening. Arthur, frustrated by Aaron's delay, asks Cheryl about Aaron's whereabouts and notes the long wait for Philip. Cheryl, annoyed, responds sharply to Arthur, indicating that Aaron's return is uncertain and suggesting that Arthur should handle the situation himself. The exchange between Arthur and Cheryl escalates into a tense standoff, with both glaring at each other. Philip demands Arthur make a decision regarding his actions. Arthur, confused by Philip's abrupt demand, asks for clarification. Philip declares that Arthur must either offer an apology or face severe consequences for offending the lese majesty. Arthur, anxious, kneels before Cheryl and offers to sacrifice himself if she wishes. Cheryl dismisses Arthur's offer and instructs him to verify Aaron's whereabouts. Arthur agrees and leaves to carry out Cheryl's instruction. Philip laughing while Cheryl noticing Philip's reaction, and Cheryl questions, is it amusing, and about his use of the term lese majesty, and notes that he hasn't changed. Philip comments that Cheryl's response is just as he remembers, implying that neither of them has changed much over time. Arthur interrupted their conversation, addressing Cheryl and urging her to come and see something. Cheryl approached the window and observed a crowd gathered outside the Vivian Church. Cheryl concluded that the crowd indicated the end of a prayer service. Arthur clarified that the crowd was not the focus of concern and directed Cheryl's attention elsewhere. Cheryl looked in the direction Arthur was pointing and saw a hostile crowd armed with weapons and fire advancing towards the church. The crowd began shouting, "The Lord who fell to a cult and leeches off the citizens of the territory, be gone." At that moment, Aaron burst into the room, knelt before Philip, and apologized for his tardiness, pledging to take proper care of him from now on. Philip comments on the noisy outside environment and questions if Aaron will be able to take care of him properly. Aaron, surprised by the mention of noise, asks Cheryl what's going on. Cheryl responds that it's just a crowd of people causing the noise. Aaron reacts by suggesting they handle the situation by eliminating the crowd. He instructs Cheryl to direct the others to deal with the crowd, dig holes, and then bury the bodies, but to burn them instead of burying them because digging is too troublesome. Cheryl starts to leave the room but turns back to ask Aaron if she is allowed to kill one person too, showing a sinister smile. Aaron smiles back and agrees with Cheryl's request to kill someone, but advises her to do it discreetly. Philip, observing the situation, reflects on Aaron's troubling transformation into a cruel and merciless figure, given his history of engaging in ruthless battles and worshipping a cult responsible for a massacre. As the knights start attacking the gathered civilians, Arthur informs Philip that they are indeed killing all the citizens. Philip considers the situation briefly, then stands up and decides to leave. Aaron, surprised by Philip's decision to leave, inquires if Philip didn't enjoy the food or if Aaron failed to serve him properly. Philip explains that he had a good time, but is leaving because Aaron is too busy to attend to him. He tells Aaron not to see him off and that he will see him next time. Aaron attempts to persuade Philip to stay, but Philip continues to leave the room. Philip, while leaving, smiles and thinks that the situation will resolve itself soon, implying it will self-destruct without external interference. Aaron, observing Philip's departure, smiles and reflects that the mission was a success. Rommel stands still among the bodies of the civilians he has killed. Aaron approaches Rommel from behind, startling him, and then moves to the bodies of the civilians. Aaron comments, "The corrupt Lord has come," addressing the situation. One of the civilians, who has regained consciousness, attacks Aaron and accuses him of being a corrupt lord. Rommel intervenes by punching the revived civilian in the face and tells him to regain control. Aaron declares that the performance is over and instructs to reward the participants with gold coins. 2 days later, Philip returns and Emperor Zerone inquires if Philip has figured out Aaron's intentions. Philip responds that there was no need to figure it out. He simply observed that Aaron is on a path to self-destruct. Zerone asks for clarification on how Aaron would ruin himself. Philip explains that Aaron has succumbed to the corrupt Vivian religion, exploited citizens, and ruthlessly killed those who rebelled. He notes that Aaron and Cheryl seem to take pleasure in the violence. Zerone remarks that while the deaths of innocent people are regrettable, Aaron's extreme actions might actually benefit them. Philip asks for more details about Zerone's perspective. Zerone hints that he has a plan involving Aaron's actions. At Brahn, Aaron takes his position in front of a practice dummy, reflecting on the hidden menacing strength behind Philip's seemingly benign demeanor. Eren wonders about Philippe's current level of power and prepares to attack. He focuses his sword energy and thrusts forward, hitting the practice dummy. Eren enhances his attack with the dragon's blessing, which increases his power, destroying to more practice dummy's position behind the first. Observing the damage, Eren comments on the inadequacy of his current power and the uncontrollable nature of the dragon's blessing. He acknowledges the need for significant improvements to challenge the Emperor, beyond just considering the development of his territory. Eren then walks away from the practice area, contemplating the journey ahead. A week later, a practice match takes place in one of the practice arenas, with Rommel leading a group of knights against another group led by a different knight, which includes elves. As the match begins, Rommel instructs his knights to form a shield wall, and they quickly obey, creating a defensive barrier. The opposing knight leader orders the elves to shoot arrows, most of which are stopped by the shield wall. The leader then commands the elves to charge, causing them to draw their swords and advance towards Rommel's group. Seeing the elves charge, Rommel tells his knights to hold their position and prepare. As the elves group attempts to leap onto Rommel's shield wall and attack from above, Rommel orders his knights to use high guard spears. The knights follow the order, thrusting their spears upward and hitting the incoming elves, causing them to fall. The leader of the enemy group tries to attack Rommel, but is easily defeated. Rommel taunts the defeated enemy leader, questioning their strategy of jumping on top of his group. Eren, observing the fight, applauds both groups, complimenting their performance. Eren inspects one of the spears, noticing what appears to be blood, and asks whose idea it was. Rommel explains that it was Canis's idea to familiarize the newly recruited soldiers with blood before sending them into battle. Eren agrees that this approach will be beneficial. A person on horseback approaches Eren, shouting that something significant has occurred. The person dismounts and kneels before Eren, informing him that the holy nation of Perse has established an army. Eren responds that the holy nation's army would be insufficient for waging war against the Empire, implying it wouldn't be a major threat. The person reveals that Perse is actually targeting their territory, which shocks both Eren and Rommel. In the meeting room, the territory administrator, Max, reports that their forces number 10,000 troops, while the enemy has 20,000, including the Perse Church's holy knights. Eren asks why the holy nation of Perse is declaring war and why the Empire isn't intervening, considering it's an invasion by a foreign power. Max explains that Perse is using heresy subjugation as their justification for the war and that the Empire is not involved due to its diplomatic ties with Perse. Cecilia, upon hearing this, begins to tremble with worry. Canis suggests that the holy nation's actions might be influenced by a bribe from the Empire. Eren asks Canis to clarify his statement about the situation. Canis explains that the timing of the invasion is suspiciously perfect, noting it occurred shortly after the Crown Prince's visit to the territory. Eren admits responsibility, saying he was focused on deceiving the Crown Prince and failed to anticipate such a crisis. Trembling, Cecilia stands up and declares that they should leave, asserting that there's no reason for the Lord to risk his safety to protect them. Eren considers whether he should send Cecilia and the others away but decides against it, recognizing that his income heavily relies on the Church of Vivian's holy water and the influence of its Crusader order. Eren then calls out to Cecilia. Cecilia responds, acknowledging Eren. Eren admits the situation is his mistake and instructs Cecilia not to blame herself or insist on leaving. Cecilia blushes and responds to Eren's reassurance. Eren stands up and instructs Canis to follow him as they go to confirm the Empire's stance on the war declaration. In Duke Eren's study room, Eren begins the process of communication. Canis casts a spell and channels his mana into a crystal ball, establishing a communication link with Crown Prince Philip Crystal Ball. Eren uses the crystal ball to address Philip, questioning why he has accepted the holy nation's declaration of war and asserting that the Brand Duchy is clearly part of the Empire's territory. Philip explains that both he and the emperor opposed the war, but the decision was made by the feudal lords, who are all aligned with the Church of Perse. Aaron requests support by asking Philip to send soldiers, emphasizing that without aid, they are doomed. He appeals to their shared royal bloodline and asks for help out of old loyalty. Philip, enraged, responds that they are not doomed. Instead, they should expel the Church of Vivian if they wish to avoid disaster. The communication connection is abruptly cut off. Philip reflects with shame, feeling embarrassed for considering Aaron a rival. Meanwhile, Aaron informs Canis of Philip's response. Canis confirms that the empire's official position is to remain not involved in the conflict. Aaron deduces that the empire's strategy is to use the holy nation to attack him, and he expresses his resolve to counter them, noting that they have underestimated him and he knows the Pope's weakness. Canis asks about the weakness Aaron mentioned. Aaron dismisses Canis's concern, indicating that the weakness is his last resort, and tells Canis not to worry about it. Aaron then requests Canis to hire a painter, as he needs to draft a response to the Holy Nation's declaration of war. A letter arrives in the Holy Nation of Perse's capital city, Regal. Archbishop Abel, seeing the painting on the letter, becomes furious, criticizing Duke Aaron for using the Holy Nation's declaration of war as a provocation. Another priest suggests that Aaron has lost his mind due to heresy influence, impairing his judgment. Archbishop Abel asserts that regardless of the empire's involvement, the territory was already slated for purification. He insists that, given the territory's perceived wickedness, they cannot delay further and orders an immediate report to His Holiness and mobilization of the Crusader order to advance on the territory. Pope Ignaz of the Holy Nation of Perse immediately orders a large-scale purification of the Brahn territory. The purification force assembled includes 500 knights from the Crusader order and about 20,000 soldiers from other orders, totaling around one-fifth of Perse's military strength. In the meeting room at Brahn Castle, Canis begins to explain the war strategy. Canis outlines that the enemy has approximately 20,000 troops, while they have only 10,000. He emphasizes that their strategy will be defensive rather than offensive, focusing on endurance and securing supplies. Canis stresses the importance of blocking the enemy's advance at Sophia's forest to prevent them from entering. Aaron inquires about the detailed plan for blocking the enemy. Canis replies that they will use chaos and fear as tactics, specifically deploying the divine magic bomb used by the Vivian religion in past wars. The mention of the divine magic bomb shocks everyone present at the meeting. Cheryl questions the use of the divine magic bomb, noting that it is a forbidden weapon and that the methods to manufacture it are lost. Canis explains that he has called Sister Cecilia for this reason, implying she has knowledge or resources related to the bomb. Cecilia protests, stating that the manufacturing methods for the divine magic bomb are lost. Canis clarifies that they don't need the manufacturing methods, they only need Cecilia to demonstrate the divine power of the Church of Vivian, and asks if she will help. Cecilia explains that the divine magic bomb is designed to neutralize the divine power of the Church of Perse, not to harm people. Aaron reflects on Cecilia's explanation, questioning why their strategist would want to use a non-lethal weapon in their strategy. Canis responds that he will be adding something to the divine magic bomb to make it lethal, addressing Cecilia's concern. Cecilia is confused by the plan involving the divine magic bomb. Canis explains that it will actually be Cheryl who will handle the task, and he provides her with a document. Cheryl questions why she is assigned this task and begins reading the document, becoming shocked by its contents. 5 days later, at the Black Forest, an elf on watch duty spots the advancing Holy Nation of Perse army. The elf jumps down from the tree and quickly reports to Aaron about the incoming army. Aaron remarks that the army is quite formidable and notes that it will take at least a week for them to cover the distance to their location. Canis notes that the enemy arriving 2 days earlier than expected suggests they are lying about their schedule and are likely fatigued. He adds that the enemy commander's impatience indicates they have no plans to withdraw safely. Eren concludes that the enemy has come merely to fulfill their orders. Eren then calls for his sister, Cheryl, who emerges from the tent and asks what is needed. Eren inquires if Cheryl has properly disguised that, referring to the object involving the divine magic bomb. Cheryl, frustrated by being asked to disguise the object after her hard work, expresses her anger towards Eren, calling him a wicked lord bastard. A scouting unit of the holy nation of Paris returns, and their leader reports to Archbishop Abel that there have been no ambushes. Archbishop Abel comments that it would be suicidal for the enemy to confront their great army and acknowledges that Duke Eren is not entirely foolish. He orders that the purification of the Brahn territory begin before sunset, instructing all troops to advance and proclaiming that God Press is protecting them. Eren, overhearing this, reflects to himself that the enemy is making it clear that they want to provoke him into action. Eren orders all troops to their positions, and the troops quickly comply, taking their assigned places. The holy nation of Per's army begins to advance, while Archbishop Abel contemplates how he will use the war to further his career, aiming to become a cardinal and eventually the pope. As the army moves forward, they experience loss of their divine power, but Archbishop Abel urges his troops not to panic and to continue advancing. Explosions occur, startling Archbishop Abel, who immediately recognizes them as divine magic bombs. From his vantage point atop a tree, Eren observes the situation and prepares to initiate their counteraction, expressing his anticipation for the battle to begin. 5 days earlier, Cheryl was surprised upon reading the document. Canis explained that it detailed the manufacturing method for magic landmines, which are lethal compared to the divine magic bomb. The strategy involves first using divine power to evoke the traumatic memories of the divine magic bomb from the religious war, and then deploying the explosive magic landmines to cause further chaos and destruction. In the present, priests of the holy nation of Paris are shouting for help, panicked by the appearance of the divine magic bombs. A frontline knight rushes to inform Archbishop Abel about the divine magic bombs, but accidentally steps on a magic landmine, resulting in an instant explosion that kills him. Witnessing the explosion, Archbishop Abel starts to sweat heavily, realizing that the divine magic bombs should not be lethal and deducing that this is a new type of weapon. Abel concludes that the enemy is using this new weapon to create chaos and then eliminate them. In frustration, Archbishop Abel curses Eren and orders his army not to panic, instructing them to continue their advance. Eren interrupts Archbishop Abel, declaring that he will pass judgment on them in the name of Goddess Vivian, insulting the holy nation. Archbishop Abel, infuriated, responds by shouting at Eren for insulting Sir Paris. Abel prepares and launches an attack at Eren, who easily dodges it. Eren, initially confused by Abel's actions, notices that Abel is smiling. The attack on Eren was a diversion. The real threat is a massive fist descending from above, which Eren narrowly avoids by jumping down from the tree. Archbishop Abel begins laughing, seemingly unfazed by the chaos and the deaths of his soldiers. Eren, observing Abel's reaction, thinks to himself that Abel's laughter is inappropriate and decides to take further action. Eren commands the knight order to charge and eliminate Abel, calling him a cultist. The knights who had been hiding start to advance towards Archbishop Abel. Angered by being called a cultist, Abel shouts back, indignantly defending his position as a disciple of Sir Paris, and declaring his intention to purify Eren and his forces. Before Abel can rush into battle, one of his knights intervenes, advising him to retreat instead. Archbishop Abel, enraged by the knight's suggestion to retreat, attacks him with his wand, accusing him of abandoning the fight against those who insulted Sir Paris. The knight, after being struck, seizes the archbishop's wand and insists that if ordered, he will lead the crusader order to fight until the end. However, he warns that if they fail, all Parisians on the expedition will be killed by the cultists. The knight pleads with Abel to order a retreat for the safety of his men. Flustered by the situation, Archbishop Abel reluctantly commands all soldiers to retreat and instructs the Crusader Order to prepare a divine shield, as divine power can still be utilized. Soldiers begin blowing whistles to signal their retreat. As the enemy retreats, Rommel's cavalry unit arrives and, seeing the retreat, becomes angry and starts to chase them. Eren stops Rommel, surprising him, and explains that the earlier command to attack was a strategy to facilitate chasing the retreating enemy. Eren warns that reckless pursuit might lead to stepping on landmines, so he will pursue the enemy himself while instructing the Night Order to go out in the forest and block the enemy's escape route. As the Night Order departs to block the enemy's escape route, Eren reflects on the situation, apologizing to Rommel and acknowledging that most of the landmines have already exploded, revealing something he didn't want the soldiers to see. Eren begins pursuing the enemy forces at high speed and thinks to himself about how effectively Canis's chaos and fear strategy has worked. Observing the fleeing enemy from a short distance, Eren channels his mental strength into his sword and adds Dragon's Blessing. He launches an attack, using a piercing wind technique against the enemy. One of the enemy knights, seeing the incoming attack, ducks to avoid being hit. While for enemy soldiers in front of knight that dodge are unaware of his attack and are sliced in half, the knight who dodged the attack is left kneeling in fear and is also killed by Eren. Eren reflects on the effectiveness of his attack, noting that while not perfect, he has managed to control Dragon's Blessing with mental strength. Realizing that what he needed was real combat experience, he continues to pursue the retreating enemy army. Observing Eren through the crystal ball, Canis notes to himself that Eren seems to have grown stronger. This marks the conclusion of the fourth part of this manhwa. The fifth part will be uploaded soon, so remember to like and subscribe to the channel for future update. Leave comments to share your experience. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.